States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Nice full house on a sunny evening. Do we have any public comment from the board?
One announcement, Mr. Chair. Just want to let everybody know that the Cable Advisory Committee, along with the Board of Selectmen, is having a public hearing about the renewal of the Comcast license. It comes up every 10 years. The public hearing is going to be in this room on May 18th, which is a Thursday night from 7 to 9. We look for anybody who's a resident who is a subscriber to Comcast, all department heads, all people in the town who want to voice their opinions about either A, their service and their customer service and their signal quality, or what they would like to have happen as far as departments in the town and the school department as well, about what they would like to see the vision of the direction of cable access, public access TV in the town be. So it's the one public hearing we'll have. We hope to have a good attendance, get a lot of input from everybody. Comcast will obviously be here. Our town council will be here, who's guiding us through this process, and after that we'll begin the negotiations because the contract is up in beginning of September. So again, May 18th, Thursday, in this room from 7 to 9, and it will be televised. Actually, take that back. It should actually be recorded because we want people here, so it's not televised live. So we just want to make that, we made that distinction at the committee that we wouldn't do it live.
Okay, I would like to remind people that this coming Saturday is our annual town meeting at 9 o'clock at the middle high school. I'd also like to remind you that we've set our Memorial Day observance for Monday, Memorial Day, May 29th at 10 o'clock. Weather permitting, at the Veterans Memorial Park across from the Senior Center. If we have weather, we'll probably move into the Senior Center. In the way of public comment, I'd just like to mention that last Thursday, at the invitation of Chief Sullivan, I attended a training session that was held at Devon's by a regional or district group of firefighters from several towns, actually 2 different districts that come together for training, and Chief Sullivan and Captain Jones were there for an intensive training workshop. The particular topic of this one was for building collapse, and they were working with cranes and very heavy cement things and learning how to, respond to disasters, etc. And it's training like this and the cooperation between towns that allows our fire department to work with other towns in the region to be trained and available to assist other towns, or to have them assist us in cases of disaster. And in many cases, the firefighters that attend these things do it on their own time and at their own expense. This particular one, the chief was on his own dime, but I believe there was some funding for the captain. But I'd like to commend them for staying up on things like this, and it was pretty impressive to watch some of the things that they were doing. Congratulations, Chief Sullivan. Is there any public comment from the public? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Lemieux. Just want to I'll be brief, take this opportunity on behalf of the DPW family to thank Mr. Alonso for his years and years of dedicated service. You've always been a supporter of the department and a great friend to me, so we all thank you. 2 things in your tenure. There have been lots of things, but 2 things that stand out is I don't know that many people know that it was Tom that was really the spearhead of what has become our comprehensive pavement maintenance plan. He pushed that right from the start. I was not a supporter at first, but proof is in what has happened. We've gone from $400,000 or $500,000 a year, and due in no small part to having a plan that'll now put us in a position this season to do $1.7 million. and a plan is what really allows us to procure that funding. The second thing, and maybe more important, is that when Tom came on the board, it was a well-intentioned board at the time, a little draconian in nature, and a little rough around the edges, and when you stood in this position right here, you never know where the next salvo was coming from, and it wasn't very comfortable. But since when Tom took over and people that came after him, as he didn't do it alone, there was a whole better sense of decorum, which we all see now in this board. They treat each other with respect. They don't always agree. They're cordial. And from this position now, they treat these folks with respect, no matter whether they agree, disagree, or not. So we've all come a long way, and for us here, it's very much appreciated. So you'll be missed.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you and just remind, first of all, thank you for the kind words, and it's been my pleasure to serve on the board in the town, but I would echo one thing that was very important in what you said, which is, it is completely a team effort. I mean, things get done by, if my actions served as any, calling for somebody else to join, and that you're part of a team and everybody works together, that was what my biggest goal was from the start. So that is the thing that I think we all feel, working with all the people I've worked with, both on this board, on other committees, and the department heads that are here, the ones that aren't here, is that, we all, when we got to pulling together, we did a lot of things, a lot of good things for this town, and it's been a pleasure being part of it. So thank you, Jack.
Any other public comment? Please.
Katie Adams from Williams Drive, and my new favorite thing to do, public comment. I saw on the agenda tonight we're talking about later articles 22, 23, 24, and 25, and I just wanted to weigh in that I'm not in favor of those. I feel they're a little bit undemocratic in the sense that they'll take away the town's ability to vote on what will ultimately be some really big decisions. I think if the Building Reuse Committee has identified really positive uses for buildings or land, that there's no reason not to trust the citizens to be a part of that decision, especially if it involves historic municipal space. I mean, I think Lunenburg makes good decisions. I mean, look at our old high school, and we said we really need a new one, and look what we have today. And so I think putting information out there, ideas out there, plans out there, I'm optimistic that people would have good discussions and, want to weigh in on that. And I think the people who support those articles think that the town being able to vote on land takes away the ability to sell it easily, where I think what's more important to identify first is, do the citizens want to sell the land, whether or not it would be easy. And so I just wanted to say I'm not in favor of those, and I think in a democracy, especially at the small town level, having it be a discussion and maybe seeing, is this the best idea, is this not the best idea, and making sure everybody feels really optimistic about what ends up occurring, just like with the high school, I think everybody feels really good about that. And I just wanted to say, let the citizens be involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any other public opinion? Public comment?
Just want to say that, to the previous speaker, that public speaking gets addictive, so it's good.
Okay, our first appointment is for an entertainment license at 300 Holman Street. We have Mr. Cohen. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, Chair and Board. My name is Jason Cohen. I represent Unifier Festival. I'm the curator there. This is our production manager, Gregory Jones. I reside in Leverett, Massachusetts, next to Amherst, and I just wanted to give you a brief discussion of what brings us here to Lunenburg. We are in our 4th year of the festival, and we have been at a property in Tolland, Massachusetts for the last 2 years. And we have joined up with an arts organization called Dance New England, where we plan on purchasing that property. We've already created an LLC and put down 10% for the property. But because things are not under contract, we needed to find another location for 1 year to bring people together. And after attending a wedding over at Darren Massey's place, he discussed that there was a possibility that we could come here and offer what we do here. Thank you. So we prepared a display for you guys over here, so I think if we just want to kick on in to that, we can check it out. So our organization's mission is we're a multifaceted group of people committed to living together in harmony with the common cause of creating and supporting gatherings, workshops, and events that inspire and educate people through the healing and expressive arts with a focus on healthy and sustainable relations to the earth and one another. Unifier Festival, or this year, Unifier Roots Gathering, will bring together an amazing group of inspirational artists and educators. This is a sacred celebration of all that we are and all that we can be, honoring and bringing together different subcultures. This gathering is a yoga festival, a sacred world music festival, and a dance festival. It is a live art show, a place for interfaith ceremony, for permaculture, for sculptural works, and circus arts. It is a place to care for the land and to eat organic food and to be inspired and inspire our kids and our elders. And just a quick note, the difference between Unifier Festival, which is a very large production, and Unifier Roots Gathering this year is that we're just looking to have a much smaller gathering for our core community to help inspire them to be on board for buying the property together until we go back there in 2018. We're ready to go to the next slide. I've actually just shared all that, so we're going to share a quick video with you guys to just show you our production quality. Thank you. So if we can go to the map on the next one, the next slide. I just wanted to share that, some of the things that make Unifier really unique. I know we're coming into the town here and there could be some concerns about some kind of wild event happening on the property, and there are a lot of things that stand us apart from other gatherings. One is that we're really an interfaith gathering. There's a lot of prayer and ceremony in honoring of our ancestors, and we ask people not to do drugs or alcohol at our gatherings. Organic food, we support local farmers. We compost all of our food. Our children's programming is immaculate.
Could you speak just a little louder, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, our children's programming is really gorgeous. We care a lot about that, and we really look to build relationships and honor, support local businesses in town when we come. So I'm going to hand it over to Gregory.
My name is Greg Jones. I live in Northampton, Mass. I'm a 35-year in the arts person. I currently am the production coordinator for the Springfield Jazz and Roots Festival. I do the Green River Festival in Greenfield. Sat on National Public Radio boards. Met Jason about 6 years ago, and it took about a year and a half to do the first Unifier Festival. We did that in Lebanon, Connecticut. In the last 2 years, we've done it in Tallinn. And for somebody who does this for a living and puts events on in different places, the thing that really distinguishes this event from any other event that I've ever really been involved in is it's an 8 to 80 type event. You find grandparents and kids. It is an event that allows communities, and now one of the major problems in communities is retention. Where young people are going to go do something healthy. There's workshops and permaculture. There's yoga classes. There's a lot of art that happens at the festival. It's a great gathering. We get folks that are local farmers that contribute to the food that's served there, and we try to be as honoring the earth and the community that we're in as much as anything else. And the town of Tallinn, which is, it's a pretty rural community, it's in the woods, has really embraced us with open arms. And you wouldn't think of Tallinn as a community that would necessarily be into this type of gathering, but they came, and we had folks from the fire department and the police department on their days off come and hang out at the festival. It really is an embracing festival. So I consider it a unique offering, and there are very few of them that happen. I think Unifier is probably the only one on the East Coast. And this particular year with the Unifier Roots Festival, it's kind of a much more strapped down version of the festival. Normally we do 2 stages, and there are different types of programming, but because of what Jason has outlined for this year and for the offerings, it will be a much more calibrated to the space event. But I'm here to answer any questions from a logistics standpoint or public safety standpoint. Again, this is what I do for a living, and we always get a lot of questions at these town meetings, but we end up meeting a lot of great people, and sometimes they go on for a couple hours, and it can be a fun time just to kind of go back and forth, but definitely here to answer any questions that people may have or concerns that they have.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gregory. I think we have 15 minutes in total.
Are there any questions from the board first?
Well, I have a number. I'd actually like to hear from our police and fire chiefs. I'm concerned about the number of attendees and possible sanitation issues. Looking at the paperwork, I'm seeing that you have porta-seans, and I'm not quite sure if those are different than a porta potty, but my main concern is a potable water supply, for sanitation washing versus just restroom facilities. So that's one question. The 2 to 250 vehicles and the potential parking concerns and fire access I'm concerned about. Where the fire would be, and you talk about, the training of the ceremonial fire, that the people are trained, but I'd like to have Chief Sullivan chime in on that. The food vendors, in your email to Elaine, you said we'd need the regulations from Board of Health. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to talk to the Board of Health, if all of the vendors that you'll be having are licensed by the Board of Health. It is required that they have a license from the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health. The other concern that I have is the times. We have and this is something I'd like to Chief Marino to chime in on, is what is our noise ordinance in the community? Reading the paperwork, it's 11:30 on Friday, and then on Saturday, you're considering until 2 a.m. With speakers, in the woods. So I'd like to hear from Chief Marino as to any potential concerns or issues with regulations that he would have. The other final concern is, my understanding is that for this property, there was an application sent to the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding a special permit for a type of a camping facility. It seems to me that this is a one-time event, so it would be separate from the application that was withdrawn. But I just want to point out that there were several abutters in that hearing, and there was a list of issues that were presented by the Lunenburg Conservation Commission, the Building Commissioner, the Land Use Director, and the Board of Health. So I don't know if we have more information about what concerns they presented, but I want to make sure that this event perhaps is vetted, it addresses those concerns, and perhaps making sure with those entities that had concerns in March relative to the Zoning Board of Appeal application, that they wouldn't have any concerns with this type of event.
Thank you. Would you like us to begin?
Sure.
Yeah. So most of that, I do believe that we are prepared to go through all of those lists.
Sorry, can you just speak up a
Yeah,
little bit?
sure, I'm sorry. I believe we're prepared to go through that entire list that was on the other application. I think there's only one piece, and maybe Darren, you could chime in if I'm wrong, but the only piece that I believe you didn't mention that was in the first application was about property value concerns. And we actually can present something. There's 11 towns in Massachusetts that the property values go up during cultural and artistic creation experiences. So that's kind of what we're providing. We believe we're bringing value. And we do have documentation to show that. As far as the Board of Health goes, we do have Valerie Bird's contact information from she's the Board of Health inspector from the town of Tolland, and we have her for a reference. All of our vendors are always Safe Serve certified and have their individual liability insurance in Tolland, and we expect that to be the same here based on your needs.
Just so, you would have to check with the Board of Health. My understanding is that they would have to be licensed by the Neshoba Board of Health if you have vendor food trucks. So you're going to have to check with the Neshoba Board of Health.
Yep. The parking, usually an engineer will show you that you can get about 150 cars with safety lanes per acre. And I heard you say that there was some concerns about parking, and so they have a lot with 2 acres of parking that we have for staff parking and open parking, a space for emergency vehicles, access closest to the gathering, to the house there. It's a pretty wide, I know it was referred to as a one-lane highway, but one-lane road. It's a pretty wide road. We checked it again today. And we've actually, what we're suggesting is that we open the gathering on Thursday for free, and we usually charge in Tolland to come a day early and get the good camping spots and get used to the land, and we usually charge $40 for that, but we were going to do that and waive the fee to usually get around 25% of our population of attendees to come early, and that would separate the traffic flow coming in, so that there wasn't one rush. And we're also very interested in talking to Chief Marino about hiring a detail, if necessary, during the day that folks are coming in and on Sunday when they would be leaving. You want to speak to that?
Well, just that we've passed every inspection that we've had, electrical, structural building, all our food for 3 years, without exception, A+. We really do want to do things in a safe manner, and we want, I jokingly tell people I'm in the public safety business, but really most of what we're dealing with is OSHA and what the state laws are in city and towns, and every town is different, and so this is kind of a figuring out what is most important to you and how you like to have things done, but all of the food vendors would apply to the city.
And you didn't talk about the sanitation aspect.
Yeah, and the sanitation, as far as the porta-sands, and each of the portable toilets have sanitation hand washing stations, but we also have additional running water and hand washing stations. We also have handicap porta-sands, so.
Is this a well, or is it water, is it the property connected to the water district?
We would provide water at the porta-sand for folks to wash their hands and
Okay.
to, yeah.
Okay, and drinking water?
That's separate, but that's not usually done with the porta-sands.
Okay, and do
Keep
you
those
have an
separate.
idea of how many you would be having for 500 people?
How many?
Porta-sands?
Well, it's kind of calibrated as one porta-sand for about 50 people.
Okay, and just so that you're aware, any portable toilet in Lunenburg also needs a permit from the Board of Health?
Yeah, well, those companies usually follow those guidelines as well, yeah.
As far as the fires go, I did see something about, we're not having bonfires, just so you know. We don't have a big bonfire. It's a very small fire with 3-foot lengths of wood, and it's very carefully watched the entire time. The dances that we do are eclectic in nature, and I've personally been, that's where all this really began for me. Basically, we sing and tell stories and dance and make music, and it's a circle dance, and I've been doing that since 2003. I've been leading those, and it's just
And where is that fire to be held?
It's in the safest spot on the property. There's a part sort of almost wrapped around by water on 3 sides on Darren's property, right up against the lake there.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I would obviously want Chief Sullivan's input on that.
Sure.
How large a piece of property is the total property that you're using? Sure.
Thank you for hearing us, Darren.
Also, you are, please.
Darren Massey. I'm the owner of the property, 300 Holman.
Thank you.
The size is 140 acres. The open fields are that you see on the map there. There's 3 acres on the left. As we look at it, there's 5 acres on the right with the pond. So total 8 clear acres. The house is in the middle, over there by the cursor. And so the festival event would be there. It's obviously much more downsized than we saw in the video, though it would be contained on the map there. The surrounding forest would remain forest and without participants. Right. I would also like, if I may, as the owner of the property, obviously I have multiple aims. One is obviously I wish to ensure my property is safe, as well as the surrounding properties are safe from all aspects, from public safety, from fire, from all insurance points of view, as well as care for the neighbors. And that goes to the fire, the safety, the sound, the porta potties will certainly keep within all the ordinances. I very much wish to maintain good standing in all ways. So I'm certainly appreciate these gentlemen making the request. I certainly wouldn't ask folks who do not have such experience and such references, unlike these folks. So I did my due diligence with these good people, and also with grateful that there's folks in Lunenburg who I believe would benefit. And so I've done what I've been able to do by having open houses, by inviting people to my property to have these discussions of what would be a contribution to the town. That's the other point of all of this, is to offer a contribution. And so I'm very grateful that there's some folks here in the audience, but other folks in town who do support this. I'm grateful for the Cultural Commission. I'm grateful for various other folks. There's conservation and folks who use the conservation land that would benefit as well. So I'm grateful to have them on board and them participating, or hope to participate in this. Though right now I'm also doing my due diligence. So thank you for yours, and I wish to join you in that, and I wish to join these good people for the benefit of the town. I think this would be very good. You did end with the financial impact. That's another aspect of this, but thank you for mentioning that point.
I have a question. In the parking area, that's 2 acres, did you say?
We actually have a slide specifically that can show the parking schematic. Ray Allen, yeah. Traffic flow, there it is. So the lower lot is 92,000 square feet plus 2.1 acres, and then there's another 40 cars further to the north there.
There was just a forest clearing in this lot, so this is a Google map picture before the trees were cleared, so the places that are drawn are actually tree-free.
And how much acreage is there for the celebration where people will be?
That would be a different slide, and I think Darren just spoke to that. Did you say 3 or 5 acres? 5 acres?
How big's the pond?
1.5 acres.
5 acres, including a 1.5 acre pond, so like 3.5 acres of land?
Sure, and then we were going to have the camping, where you see where it says camping there on the north side of the river. If you're interested, I could give a quick description. It might help if somebody actually goes up there and points at stuff, but we talked about the music. It's really hard to make out what it is, but there's a stage. Could you point to the stage with the pointer? There you go, thank you. So that's where we were going to drop the stage, and we did look at the Google Earth overhead to try to find out where there were no neighbors, and that goes for a real long time. So we specifically do this a lot with our speakers and point the stage in a specific direction to not disturb anybody. We're also setting up a hotline that we can publish in the newspaper and put on our website, that if anybody is hearing something, sometimes bass frequencies do have a mind of their own, and we're ready to move those speakers a little bit, and it makes a very large change. We'll have that. We have an office manager on call 24/7 to receive phone calls if there's any concerns like that. I mean, those are just little tents to show where the vendors are going to go. There's a little sort of, there's the children's tent where you're getting right there, so that the kids, we can see the kids right from the main field. That's where that'll be happening. And then you see a little strange tent, sepia tone tent in the upper right. You actually just put it off. And that's what we call like our healing zone, where there's massage being offered, and there's a tea house there. And it's a very serene spot. And then lower down is the circus area, where there are people doing like aerial silk performances, sort of lyra and trapeze stuff. They'll be right there. And then of course you see the first aid plus sign. That's in the house. We're setting up an infirmary inside the house in case there's an emergency. If there's any need. And there's a water droplet that got a little warped right there. That's where we were going to have a water buffalo to take care of people's needs.
Will you be using the pond for swimming?
No, we're going to,
Okay.
no swimming allowed.
Okay, so there will be nobody in the water?
Unless someone in the town found a way for us to be able to do that safely within your bylaws, we're not going to have any swimming in the pond. We're going to have people sign something, and we're going to have people on call to make sure that no one's, that everybody's safe. We don't want anybody going in there, so.
Okay, and where will people be camping?
On the north side of the river, in their tents in the woods.
Oh, that's the vendors. The white tents are the vendors.
There's, maybe it's not on your map, but it says along, you can't see it right now. Yeah, camping right there in blue.
There was just a tree harvest, so this is a Google Maps picture when the forest was really dense. This is all.
You need to use a microphone, I'm sorry, so people at home can hear you.
She was saying that the trees have been thinned out there on the north side of the river, and that there's plenty of spaces to camp right there along the river.
Thank you, Sue. Darren Massey, I own the west side on both sides of Mulpus Stream, so it's my property on both sides of the stream where they've done the thinning of the forest. There is conservation land on the east side, though we will not obviously be going anywhere near the conservation land. And these good people could talk about how we will ensure people do not extend into the conservation land. There is obviously the physical river preventing people from going over, though they could speak about extra precautions to ensure the folks stay where we say.
Yeah, speaking, this is such a funny microphone. Speaking to the Conservancy, our community loves nature, and that's kind of one of the things that's special about who we are. So I just want to speak that because I know there's some concerns about the land, but really that's part of what has been so true about our organization since we began. I'm a musician personally, and I actually have brought choirs into Trinity Church in Boston at Christian gatherings on Earth Day, and that's kind of how we all come together, is through our reverence for the land and Mother Nature, really. So I'm sharing that just, so you know, somebody had written something as a concern about people that are gathering are going to go into the woods and do something disrespectful, and that's just not who we are. And people are coming to be with us and be together and create culture and be in community. So I don't think that's really a possibility.
Do either of the chiefs want to check in at this point? I mean, I think that what we've asked is for you as the applicants to make sure that you've checked with the police and the fire and that they're signing off. But do you want to make a comment now, Chief? I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, you're not. They seem like they're a very organized group. However, obviously from a public safety standpoint, we're always concerned when a group of 500 or more people gathered in one spot. This sounds like a really great group of people. However, it's nothing anybody can say could assuage any anxiety that I might have with respect to a large group like that. Secondly, I understand there's 250 cars estimated that will need to be parked on Holman Street, and they're using both sides of the street for camping purposes, or?
Neither side.
Neither side. So where are the cars going to be parked? In those fields?
Yeah, there are literally, you see there's a fine red line outline around where the parking is and 3 parking signs. Mm-hmm. So people will drive up and enter in the right, to the right, and we'll have people, attendants with walkie-talkies and orange bright vests, parking them in an organized fashion into that 90,000+ square foot area.
Okay.
And then we'll probably have everybody park, facing out in case of an emergency. That's what we usually do.
It's actually safer to have all the cars in that spot.
Okay. So you're expecting like 500 people and 250 cars?
People very rarely come by themselves, so.
Right. Will there be people coming and going, or?
It's not that type of event.
It isn't?
People come for the weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, predominantly. There are people that come for a day, they'll do a day.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you're buying the weekend experience. The programming is different, the workshops are different throughout the weekend.
I need everybody that's speaking to be close to the microphone.
People tend to come for the weekend. It's a weekend experience. The workshops change daily, so folks that are there, if you're interested in yoga, there are different teachers that are teaching different styles of yoga, and on, from music offerings to workshops. So they change. So people tend to come for the entire gathering. There isn't an in and out like you would have at a normal, one-day festival.
And we're definitely capping the attendance. We're not letting more than 500 attendees come in. Because, people have to come through the door and we welcome them in.
So this event will start on a Thursday night and end on a Sunday afternoon, is that correct?
It starts on Thursday afternoon, really, for the early arrivals, Thursday afternoon, but there's no programming. We don't play any music through a speaker until Friday. There might be a couple announcements.
Okay. My only other concern, or one of my other concerns, I should say, is the vehicles coming in and out of Holman Street onto Chase Road. As you know, Chase Road is a very well-traveled road. The speeds tend to be reasonably higher than they should be. and that road obviously is affixed on a curve. So that's a concern for me if you're going to have kind of an exodus of people on Sunday, I would assume. Is that correct?
Yeah, Sunday, people usually leave at a lot of different hours. Some people are like, let's go home, in the afternoon. They don't stay for the very ending. So we also, with permission, often let people stay until Monday morning with no programming again once Sunday night happens. So there isn't that mass exodus. We try to avoid that and let people integrate and just kind of be together for a little while. And also, again, if it's your advice that we should hire a detail for that spot, we're really, more than happy to for that one place or wherever else.
Sunday people tend to get up. On Sunday, people do kind of get up, have breakfast, and leave. So there's that side of it too, but it's not like everybody gets up and leaves at the same time, because there's plenty of programming that happens throughout the day on Sunday. So, but there are folks that, maybe have coming from, longer distances that may want to get up and leave in the morning. So, but again, it's not one of those things where, okay, everything's over, everyone leaves.
Okay, so I probably would require some type of police presence, particularly with respect to the comings and going of the traffic. And if this is allowed, then we'd need to sit down and go over some kind of a traffic plan. Paul, your concern was noise levels. This, under Chapter 272, there's no actual time limit, so to speak, although case law dictates that between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., that although there's no, well, let me just say this, the entire law is based on a reasonableness factor. After 7 p.m. at night or before 7 a.m. or between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., obviously that changes. So after 7 p.m., that reasonableness factor starts to elevate. So the police, in other words, have a lot more latitude with respect to noise after 7 p.m. than they would, say, during the daytime. It's very subjective, but obviously if residents are calling in that area and there's a noise complaint, then we have no choice but to come down there and obviously ask you to turn the music down. Now, that being said, if that happens, now my concern is that we're increasing calls for service over a weekend, which everybody here knows that's a problem sometimes for us on the weekends. So, I'm just putting that out there, that these are our concerns. And I think if that would start to happen, I got to tell you that with my experience in the past with these sort of events, that then we may ask you to hire more police, to have more police presence and hire maybe a detail cop for the, in that area of the event to help quell any of those kinds of problems.
Two points that I would like to make is, I think if anyone had gone to any of our events, they would be shocked that because there's so many different things going on, there isn't like everybody standing in front of the stage listening to music. It isn't that type of experience. You may only have, at some points, 10% of the people there, or 20% of the people there in front of a music stage. A lot of what's going on, again, is happening with sound healing, or it may be a workshop, or it may be the fire circle. So just as an event organizer and somebody who gets hired to do these, I'm always shocked at how much of a flow there is with the folks that attend this festival. It isn't a mosh pit type of event at all. Okay.
Again,
I'm just dispelling fears.
No, and I don't suspect that it would be. I mean, obviously, you seem very genuine about what you're trying to accomplish here, and it seems like a very, very nice event. But you gotta understand, we don't know you, we don't know how it operates. I haven't had an opportunity to talk to the Tallinn chief yet, because I didn't realize they were a part-time police department. I had to leave a message, and it said that he'd call back within 2 days, so. But I plan on, I have to talk to him first, so.
We also have security folks that we have ourselves that are there, just, for first aid and just for...
Okay.
Can I just check in about something that you said, just somebody who's curating the different acts that are coming from different parts of the state to get on stage and share their gifts? When you use the term reasonable to define our parameters for the gathering, I would love if we can agree on reasonable by decibels, because I know might be a couple of people that just doesn't want Darren to do anything on the land, and that's okay, because, without judgment, they want to keep the place exactly how it is, and they don't know who we are, and they don't know if we're good people or we're coming in there and doing something. But it would be really wonderful if, if you're standing on the land or a little bit off the land and it's not loud, that be reasonable, so that we can plan the way we need to plan,
Well, look at it this way. After, say, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, you're laying in bed, and it's a very quiet town, and you're hearing the most minute noise that they're not used to hearing. If it's not a screech of an owl, right, or a fish or cat, which they're used to, or if they're hearing a thump, 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 or something like that, they're going to call the police.
Yeah.
And the police are going to have to respond, and we have a duty, obviously, to take care of that situation and make it calm for them again. And so you got to look at it that way. Is particularly when you start approaching 11 o'clock at night, you're going to run into a problem. I can almost guarantee it. If there's any sort of noise that's going to make its way into the neighborhood.
Thank you. And
I'm going to make a recommendation. We've made a lot of points, and I think you've responded to several of them. I'm going to suggest that at the minimum, we said we need to talk to the Board of Health, the Neshoba Board of Health. I think you need to make the chief of police comfortable, the fire chief comfortable. What I'm going to suggest is that, although this isn't a public hearing, that we delay a decision until a future meeting, and I know you have to plan and advertise, et cetera, but I'm going to suggest we have a workshop on the 9th. No later than the 16th, we could get all these parties to come together.
Of May?
Yes. Okay, and perhaps we do meet on the 9th, so we were planning a workshop, but perhaps we can work something out. But I think there's some work. This is the first I've heard of this at all.
Me too.
And I think there's some work for all of us to do to do our homework about you, and you with some of our people as well.
What's that?
So I don't believe the board is ready to take a decision
No,
tonight.
absolutely
So I
not.
think the best thing for us to do is to use this time to answer questions and get the appropriate approvals. Although it's not a public hearing, if someone's here this evening that came specifically to talk on this topic, I'd welcome them to identify themselves now.
Thanks. I'm Bill Kennerson from South Row Road. I came with my family. My wife and I both have attended Unifier in Tolland. I went for a day and she went for the weekend. And the one thing I wanted to say was that I don't think I've attended a festival that was as well organized and full as with as many respectful people. The place was spotless. There was people were very friendly, not outrageous, very respectful of the land and the people attending, and the staff was very careful to make sure that everything was going on well, and the food vendors were food safe, because I'm paranoid about eating bad food. I think that it would be beneficial to the town to begin to bring something like this in, and it really opens up a whole new venue for the town in opening up and moving forward into the future to have things like this. We're always trying to look for something that brings business to the town, and that will bring some business as well as maybe setting a precedent for the future. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Hi, I'm Betsy Kennerson, and I'm on 199 South Row Road. Like Bill said, I attended the festival 2 years ago for a day and then loved it so much I went back for the weekend last year. I'm a nurse and I'm also a Girl Scout, so I'm very safety-minded, porta potties, all of that, and I was very impressed by the organization, by the cleanliness, and just by the overall environment that they created. As we were leaving the first year we went, we stopped and thanked the law enforcement that were there on detail, and I believe it was the chief of police that was there who said he had never met a group of nicer people, and that, you know, you're more than welcome to come back anytime. So I thought that was just impressive. They were super nice too, but just a really incredible event for kids to 80-year-olds. I'm somewhere in between, I won't say exactly what. But just a really, really beautiful family, spiritual event. So I give it a thumbs up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would agree with your comments that I don't believe we're ready to make a decision tonight. I'd certainly want to hear from the chiefs, and I'd also like to hear from the Board of Health, potentially the Land Use Director, and even the Conservation Commission, because it does about the conservation land. It is along the Mulpus Brook, which is one of the cold water fisheries in town. As was pointed out, this group is specifically sensitive to the land, so I'm not necessarily doesn't raise a red flag, but I'd certainly like the Conservation Commission to have the opportunity to chime in.
Mr. Chair, the one thing that that hasn't been discussed that I brought to mind to you in a private comment is I'm not certain what they're applying for is a weekday entertainment. I don't know what the scope of that entertainment license is. Most of them are single-day events. They don't really suppose people are going to be staying over. There's going to be parked cars overnight. There's going to be people staying overnight. So I think we need to look at what our authority is and what is the landowner's authority to do something like that on their land. I mean, public safety notwithstanding, which obviously is an important issue that supersedes everything. But as far as our licensing goes, what they're looking for is kind of unusual because the event they're looking for has not been held in town before that I'm aware of. The closest thing to it would be like the town fair or the Stillman Fair, which is a one day. So yeah, 2,000 people came, but it was one day and it wasn't an overnight. It was really a daytime period. And that's the thing we really have to make sure, do we have the authority to author these licenses for what they're looking for? And also, what is ours as a town and the property owner's insurance and liability? Mm-hmm. Like, should something happen, and I don't presume that it would, but whose responsibility is that is important. If we issue a license, does that grant in any inadvertent way some acknowledgement that the town is liable for something? And I want to make sure that that's clear.
I'd like to just speak to that. Elaine Peterson and I went over some things, and we definitely have to protect ourselves as well, and we've already named the town of Lunenburg. We're ready to go forward with that on our coverage, on our insurance liability.
And I would say that every town's entertainment license is never precise to any event. So you almost have to, it would be in your best interest to, make them original, for each event. That way you're protected. They're not grandfathered into the next event. So, for instance, whatever. I don't want to give any examples, but I mean, in most towns, when we were in Lebanon, we had to do that as well. It's the normal way of addressing the conservation concerns, the different concerns. So you would put that in the entertainment license.
I think we need to check with our zoning officer. To Mr. Alonso's point, is this permittable under our existing regulations? We have our land use director has his hand up.
I think the difference is the entertainment license is within the Board of Selectmen. Through zoning, this is not something zoning would concern itself with because it's not a use of the land, it's an event on the land. We have checked with council, this would continue to fall under the residential use. It's a one-time event. If this were something that they did quarterly at this property, then we get into a different set of zoning issues. But where it's a one-time use of the land, it doesn't change the use of the land. It's a one-time event.
So camping, frankly, my concern is the potential for camping. And, you know, people camping on the property, and it's potentially 5 days, is, you know, Thursday through Sunday.
Correct. It's a stringed together singular event, so it's not a precedent-setting change of use. The application that they presented to the zoning board was to establish a private camp and a private club. They have withdrawn that application. We've met with the property owner, we've had some discussions. A majority of the comments that were submitted, both by the Board of Health, the building inspector, and by myself, all revolved around what the impact would be on a long-term basis for a permanent facility, how what was proposed within the application fit into what the actual description of those uses were within zoning, whether or not what they were proposing actually had any connection to any of the uses we had within zoning. The fact that this is a singular event, regardless of the duration, I mean, I think if we said it's a 6-month festival, that might skew things a little bit, but it's it's finite and singular, so that takes it out of the realm of zoning and puts it into an event setting, which, not having any real clear language on entertainment license, just weekday entertainment license, I think that's kind of where it ended up falling, because it does have a significant entertainment component.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pose a question to the land use director and actually the town manager, and I realize it's off the cuff question, but, you know, if I was a homeowner and I wanted to have a wedding, a one-day wedding, or maybe even a two-day event wedding at my property, and I had 500 people, I mean, I would assume that there's different allowances for if it was a commercial venture. I think that the fact that, so my question is this a commercial venture, or is this an event being hosted on the property owner, at the property owner's intent, with no commercial interest at all? He's just doing it as a homeowner. I think that colors the licensing picture a little bit.
It does. I think if your cousin really likes your house and wants to have their wedding there, and you say, sure, you know, I'm coming to the wedding, I love you, come have your wedding here, that doesn't change anything. You don't need a license for that. If there is a commercial component, I think that's generally what trips it into the licensing realm. Again, I also think there's a magnitude thing, a magnitude to it. I mean, you could conceivably have 500 people at your house for a wedding that you're not charging for, and maybe you don't need an event permit for that. It would certainly raise some concerns. I think a lot of what we've already heard here. But you're also not advertising, and there's a different dynamic to it. I can't give you all the specifics, and maybe if you brought 500 people to a residence for a wedding, it might cause some concern, and you may need to do some additional things. But I think that there's a commercial component to this, which is where the licensing comes from. I think also the duration, the stage, the music, the general tone of it is a little bit grander than a singular ceremony.
Right. And that's my point.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to suggest...
Could I?
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, sir. I just wanted to share that the Heartbeat Collective is incorporated as a 501c3 in Secretary of State William Galvin's database, and we are finishing up our bylaws right now to be recognized on a federal level as a 501c3. Thank you.
I'm going to suggest that you come back and visit us again, and we'll say the 16th if you can work with with Elaine and somehow fit in on the 9th. we'll do the best we can.
The 9th would be great.
Okay, well, we'll see what we can do.
I'd like to be here, but
And,
I'll leave it up to the chair.
and, you know, my concern is whether or not all of the departments that were asking for input will have the opportunity to respond for the
That-
9th.
that's where I was going.
I have to say, I think the 16th is more realistic.
And I would invite all those boards here.
I would as well. And I think 1 week is just not going to give them the sufficient time that they need.
I did hear that, you said you didn't hear about this until tonight, so I'm just wondering how to open the flow of communication for us, the best way to do that with you guys so we can get everything done,
I think you just did.
Yeah.
But I think it's up to you to reach out to the various departments that we've talked about. So, for example, the public safety departments, the land use departments, I think it's going to be up to you to contact them and provide any information that they need.
Say there's 4 that were mentioned tonight, so 2 of the chiefs are here, fire and police. Board of Health, and Paula mentioned because it's a budding conservation, so conservation.
Yeah, and we're
And
more than
the
willing
zoning
to take
officer.
meetings prior to that meeting. So come in and take individual meetings if you wanted to do that and drill down. The other, a couple of pieces, and that's really kind of important, it's a open to the public event. It's not a closed event. Like I said, we had members of the town that came, and you can call the fire department, and we had firefighters that were there with their families, and we actually had tickets at the library for folks in town if they wanted to come and kind of share the experience, so.
So that would raise another concern for me with traffic, because now you're talking about people coming and going versus parking for the event.
We're not talking about 50 people. We're talking about like 4 library passes. So like somebody came to the library and you can check out. It's like going to a museum,
So I think that's the kind of conversations I think you have to have with the chief. And I think before we can make a decision, I think we're going to have feedback from the departments that we mentioned. So I think if you can contact them.
I'm not talking about 25 people.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it's just to be part of what the town is doing, so the town kind of gets a chance to experience the event, that's all.
Oh, I just thought of a question about waste removal. How will you handle all of that?
It's done by the...
We have a person a team of people that specialize in waste removal. Again, being very much, having a lot of care about nature. We have a very serious recycling team, separate. We have 25 buckets in storage right now in different trash bins with different signs that separate all the garbage, and we also compost. All of our food wastes were brought to a farm last year, and we would research that here and find out if there's somewhere we can bring that, someone, who would use the compost from the food.
And I think that's something that the Board of Health is going to ask. I think the Board of Health is going to go through, the water, the sanitation, those are typical things that the Board of Health would want specific details on. So the Board of Health agent, I would suggest that you reach out to the Board of Health agent and make arrangements to meet with him and go through your plan and meet any requirements that he's going to make, as with public safety.
I think Valerie Bird, who was the health commissioner in Tallinn and Williamsburg, who was there for 2 years, saw all our recycling. We have a green team. We do it all. And bicycles, we're very serious about ecology and leaving the land in better condition than we find it.
We absolutely appreciate that, but I think it's our responsibility to make sure that our different departments...
I'm making a forceful argument. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you again. Okay. Our next appointment is with the Police Association. Car show proposition, Chief Marino. Sure.
All right. So the Police Relief Association would like to do a cruise night. Sorry. in the center of town here on Memorial Drive. Now, the Police Relief Association Committee, a member of which is right here with me tonight, checked with the school department, the Council on Aging, Teen Center, and so on and so forth, and asked if they would be opposed to having an event like this on Memorial Drive. And we're talking about a 4-hour event, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. on a Wednesday night, where we've invited members of the hot rod, classic car, antique car community to come and display their cars. The purpose really of it is not only to get that group to come and display their vehicles, but to invite as many of the local businesses as we can to come and promote their businesses. Now, we're not looking to make any profit on this at all. There's, in fact, little to no money will exchange hands. It's just a community event to try to get local businesses together and try to get the community together for a few hours up here in this venue in the center of town. So essentially, that's all it is. Now, we've put it out there and got some interest from some of the local dealerships who want to display new cars up here. A couple of local businesses already have expressed an interest to put a booth up here. We're trying to get the food people up here from the community, pizza shops. We're going to ask Zetas to see if they want to put a booth so they can run back and forth and, do orders, that sort of thing.
I assume you mean Bad Larry's.
I'm sorry?
I assume you mean Bad Larry's, not Zetas, right?
It's Bad Larry's now. Bad Larry's now.
I don't want people getting them wrong.
Let me fast forward here a little bit. Anyways, we've got some response from North End, which is actually owned by I can't remember the name of it now, brain cramp. But anyways, North Colonial, thank you, the Colonial Auto Group, to participate. Ron Bouchard's going to bring some cars up from his museum, I understand. So this is what we're trying to do, just promote business in town and try to get the community together and see how it goes. And if it takes off, we're hoping maybe next year, we can do something even bigger. And again, inviting all our local businesses, just as a promotional thing, community event, kind of a block party sort of thing without any alcohol.
Are you going to be is it your intention to block off the street?
Yes.
Okay, and have you talked to the residences who live on that? There's like a couple next to the library.
Yeah, well, we're waiting to get your blessing first, and then we're going to proceed with that.
That's hinging on them. It's their access to their house.
Yeah, right.
If they're okay with it, I'm okay with it.
Well, we're gonna obviously leave that piece open. We're gonna have volunteers from the police, police officers from the police association scattered throughout this whole venue, and that'll be one area that we'll try to keep open to make sure they can get in and out with no problem. We're not gonna block that road. Probably not even gonna use that piece of the road. Just the main piece from here down into the high school parking areas, library, down near the Brooks House, the...
Okay, so that was my question, is where are the cars going to be? So it's basically going to be from Memorial Drive down...
Straight down.
Heading down towards the high school, and then encompassing the library parking lot as well?
Right, yes.
Okay, and where would people park?
We're going to try to use the school parking lots for the cars people that arrive just, to be there to park.
Okay.
And then have them walk up along that whole venue, because we're going to try to set up cars along the whole, we're hoping we get enough cars to participate, to go from the access to the high school all the way up to the teen center.
Okay.
And along that, those parking lots along there as well, we're leaving some space for booths and whatever else. Food vendors, I believe the Lions Club is even going to help us with a food booth, so.
Okay. And looking at the flyer, you have a classic car, but you've talked about new cars. Are you going to open this for people to bring classic cars as well?
Oh, yeah, classic cars, antiques, classics, hot rods, those, all of them. But what we're trying to do is help the local car businesses promote their vehicles as well. So we've given them, we're offering them an opportunity to come up and display a car, because we'll have, it'll be a lot of car people there, so it's a good venue for them to do that sort of thing, we thought. So I guess I don't think I've missed anything. I think that's it in a nutshell. We're going to try to have somebody turning records, oldies kind of music records. We're going to try to get a DJ up there. Well, we're not going to try. Well, we are going to get a DJ up there. And Gibby Lasher had offered to come up with his accordion too and do his thing.
Awesome.
So,
Have you checked with the police chief about this? And is anybody sleeping over?
it could be.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I do too.
I would say seriously that you just want to check with, then there's a handful of residents I don't foresee, but I don't want to speak for them. I don't foresee there'd be a problem as long as they have access to their house. If it's true block party, because I've done enough of those in Brooklyn, you cut off the streets and nobody gets on for 4 hours, which they may be fine with, but it would be good to give them the courtesy of.
Oh, absolutely. Tomorrow night he's going to start doing that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We spoke with the high school. That night, there is no event planned. Our goal is to have them access on the back side of the high school, and they can come in that way, so in front of TC Pasio's. That will be a walking area. We could talk with the fire chief about opening up the fire lane, and then people can kind of walk up and down as they see fit. Other than that, we've touched upon the chief, everything else. We talked to Cherry Hill. I think we're just waiting on a finalized answer from them.
Yep.
In terms of having some ice cream down there. And we brought up the idea as my family owned a bar in Fitchburg for years, a pub, and we did a cruise night. It's just a great time. Everybody comes down, everybody mingles, everybody talks with each other. That was what we wanted, to bring people to the center of town. So that was pretty much what we did. We picked a date that worked with everybody. Rob DeCosta and myself went around all the businesses, and everybody was ecstatic. So we're hoping this will be our trial run. Next year, this can become an annual event.
Well, I want to thank you for bringing it forward. I think it's a great opportunity for the businesses and for the community to come together, so I think it would be great.
Thank you.
One question that I have, you mentioned the pub. Is there any alcohol to be served during this event?
Oh, no, ma'am. This is going to be a police-related event. I just brought that up from my experience planning and organizing a cruise night.
Yeah.
There will be no alcohol served at this event.
Okay.
And probably not even any alcohol in the gas tanks of some of these cars either.
Well, a few people that have some souped-up cars, so thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'd like you to save a booth for the town. We'll put our volunteer booths up and try to get people to, entice people to join committees and such.
Exactly, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Anybody.
Right.
Right, yeah, great, absolutely.
I'll drag out our posters and twist on.
But again, there's no fees for any of this, but you gotta bring your own booths, set up, you know what I mean? We'll make space for you, obviously a lot of space for you over there, there's plenty of space. And,
So people that are interested should contact in getting a booth. Who should they contact?
they can call me, call my cell phone or whatever, or call the police station.
Okay.
Yeah, and ask for me, and I'll either take care of it or pass it on to Ben and Rob, who are on the committee.
Okay. Do we need a formal vote on this?
I would include one, yes.
Okay. I would make a recommendation that we approve the cruise night as requested by the Lunenburg Police Relief Association to take place on June 14th with a rain date of the 21st from 4 to 8 p.m. With the stipulation that the residents retain access. We have no opposition to closing access for the duration of the event.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have fun.
And
Thank you.
we will advertise the phone number as well now that we've got some kind of okay.
Okay.
After we talk.
Okay, great.
Speak with them this week.
Talk to all the residents.
Should mention it at town meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great idea. Thank you. I'll see you there.
Thank you.
Well,
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, our first order of current business is the ATM Town warrant. There are actually three portions of this. One is a conversation on Articles 22 through 25. I'd like to lead that, and Damon McQuaid, who's a member of the Building Reuse Committee and Vice Chair of the Planning Board, is going to assist me in that. If you recall, the four items on the warrant talk to adding conveyance to the the rights and obligations that the selectmen currently have representing the town on the 4 properties outlined. Quick review, the 4 properties that we're talking about are the Ritter Building, the Town Hall, the old primary school, and the Brooks House. And currently, the status of those 4 properties are they're in the care, custody, and control of the Select Board. The warrants call for us to add the word conveyance to allow the Select Board to also, in addition to care, custody, and control, sell, lease, negotiate in that regard. At our last special town meeting, we discussed this proposition and came to a resolution that we wanted to ensure that any negotiations and/or discussions around sale, lease, et cetera, would require a town meeting vote. The Building Reuse Committee feels very strongly that our ability as a town to market, to negotiate, to utilize buildings that are or may become surplus is enhanced by the ability of people who are responsible for that and who have a knowledge of all the data associated with that, be able to make that decision. Now, that does not preclude in any way the Select Board from involving the town, having public sessions, having marketing sessions, having charrettes, involving input from different people, hiring consultants, hiring real estate people, et cetera. But the Select Board at least believes, the Building Reuse Committee, at least believes that the selectmen should have the ability to convey that property if it becomes appropriate. One of the concerns, and the reason for us revisiting it tonight prior to the town meeting, is that there was a concern that not enough safeguards were in place, and Mr. McQuaid is here to talk about the nuances of the village district bylaws and the architectural protection bylaws.
Good evening, Damon McQuaid, 49 Brookview Terrace. Again, just like Jamie said, I want to go over some of the things that the Village Center District and the APD Architectural Protection District cover in the center of town. And I think, at least personally anyway, my goal is not to take this out of the hands of the people whatsoever. I just feel like town meeting floor is a difficult place to design by committee what the town would like to see in the center of town, and the appropriate boards which have control over the center of town being the planning board administering the Village Center District and the Architectural Protection District folks who also have a say in how buildings look in the center of town. Those would be the appropriate scale for the conversations that would be productive and get people's input for the town center compared to a mad rush on town meeting floor. But just to speak to what would be specifically looked at under the Village Center District, with a broad brush, we can talk about the use provisions of what could actually happen with those properties once they're sold, because folks want to have the comfort of knowing what's going to happen with it. We're not just, Board of Selectmen isn't just going to be able to do whatever they want to do with it. So I believe you guys had a handout, but to quote the Village Center District, the uses that are allowed are retail spaces with a maximum of 5,000 square feet of floor area. And just by reference on what kind of size that is, if you were to think of the Ritter Building, if you include the 2 floors in the main section and the addition portion, that's 6,000 square foot building. So we're talking smaller than the Ritter Building. Professional office space, being engineers, architects, lawyers, things of that nature. Personal services, artist space, restaurants, bed and breakfast, mixed use containing less than 5,000 square feet per proposed use. So again, we've heard concerns about Walmarts and such going in the center of town, that clearly it doesn't fit that criteria. Multiple commercial use spaces, so smaller tenants, more shops and such, as you already see in the center of town, that scale of things. and civic uses as well. There are several uses allowed by special permit, so this would be under even a higher level of scrutiny for anyone to put these in. One being single and two-family homes, and that may sound weird, but when we crafted the bylaw, we wanted to make sure that any reuse of these properties in the center of town went to a higher and better use than somebody putting in a subdivision or a bunch of single-family homes. They should be contributing to the community and giving back more so than that. Also allowed are multifamily homes, but touch on it later. The first floor of any structure can only be 25% residents, so any multifamily type of situation going in, we need to incorporate a mixed use that also had shops and storefront on the ground level for people to use. Again, apartment complexes would fall in the same line. Movie house with a maximum of 2 screens. Liquor stores. Outdoor markets, private clubs, drive-throughs for banks only. So again, no fast food, no McDonald's kind of situation going to arise. Mostly because we're looking for a walkable community, and that you don't want anything that's going to increase traffic to the point where it's going to hinder people walking around. Then retail use greater than 5,000 square feet, but we'll get again in the later that line is there to allow use greater than 5,000 square feet in an existing building that's existed since 2015 when we wrote this bylaw. So that's why that line is there. And then uses allowed by right with a floor area greater than 5,000 square feet included in multiple commercial use and mixed use development. So then those were all special permit items. So there's special criteria that's going to be specifically looked at in the approval of any of those special permit criteria, and that's to make sure that the development is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the bylaw and will promote the purposes of the Village Center District. The use is in harmony with those of the abutting properties and the Village Center District as a whole. All applicable standards for use, parking, and dimensional requirements are met. All applicable design standards are met. And when multiple structures are proposed in the site design reflects a thoughtful arrangement of elements that will facilitate the movement of pedestrians between the structures, the use of sidewalks, internal walkways, alleys, or open space. So again, working on the walkability, making this a centerpiece for people to gather, do things like the chief was just here talking about, getting people in the center of town, bring them together, but to have it occur naturally on a daily basis, not just when somebody comes up once a year and has a special event to do it, to draw people in. We want it to happen naturally. Again, to calm any fears, uses that are specifically prohibited in the Village Center District are newly constructed one-story buildings on lots less than 5 acres. The only lot less than 5 acres in the Village Center District is the Passios property, which building use has been talking about using as a new town hall, so that would be off the table to start with. But again, that's prohibiting the large one-story buildings is again to focus on a mixed use, to get a use of shops, storefronts, and again, more people living in the center of town to kind of make that critical mass to get all these things to keep happening and really develop the center of town to be a self-sustaining element. And then again, reiterating that drive-through establishments are prohibited, again, for the traffic calming measures. So if anyone says, well, what's going to show up? I mean, it's very specifically, those are the things that we're going to allow and not allow. So it's not, nobody should be blindsided, or nobody should be worried about being blindsided by a use that doesn't comply with any of this criteria. And we spent a year and a half holding charrettes and public hearings and doing research with the Historic Commission and historic societies for as far as what's appropriate, what has been in the center of town. So I feel like we've vetted a lot of these things and spent a long time putting the work in to establish that criteria and get kind of buy-in from the community that this is what we actually want from our center of town. So to me, again, I took part in all of that, so I'm comfortable with it, but I feel like folks should feel comfortable with the fact that we put a lot of thought into what would be allowed in the center of town. And in the handout that I believe you guys have, I pull out a few of the design criteria for what we'd be looking for under these reviews. But again, goes into all things about the building design, the facade, the percent openings of the facade, keeping the materials in the appropriate tradition of the New England architecture, making sure there's no blank walls addressing the street, making sure roof lines are, no one sees a flat roof from the street. It just goes on and on about quality of building, making sure it fits in with the character of the center of town. We go into signage and site design, making sure it's walkable, making sure entrances address the street, making sure there's plazas and entryways for folks walking up to buildings, landscaping strips, using natural planting. We go into talking about lighting. Everything's dark sky compliant, well lit, so everything feels safe. So from the Village Center District, I feel like we really should have covered all the fears that anybody could possibly have. And again, anyone looking to build anything in the center of town is going to have to go through public hearings where folks are going to have a chance to address any of those specific elements as they come up, rather than, again, on town meeting floor, which is going to be a really challenging place to tackle all these issues should anyone have an issue with what's presented. Just to briefly touch on the Preservation District, which is kind of the second level of protection, they're a newly formed board. They haven't had a lot of activity in town yet. They're still writing their kind of rules and regulations and guidelines, but the real APD bylaw itself outlines that they'll be reviewing any demolition or alteration of a historic building in the center of town, what materials are going to be reused on that building, again, talking about the roof lines, the scale, just everything to make sure that is in harmony with the historic nature of the town center. So again, another layer of defense, another set of public hearings where people can come and voice their opinions about how whatever's proposed should be done in the right way. So again, I don't see these warrant articles as taking away anybody's voice to express their opinion about what should happen with the center of town. I just feel like it's focusing those voices into the way that's going to be most effective to get things done. That's my personal opinion, but.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Just to bookend this, the Building Reuse Committee will dissolve at annual town meeting, and from that point on, whatever we do, it becomes the responsibility of the town, and the town is us and the town manager, and, however we direct that to happen. Number two, I lost it. I forget what number two was. We purposely proposed, and it's certainly this board's decision, that these be taken as 4 separate warrant articles. So if in fact you agree with the point we're trying to make on one building and not another, we can have that discussion. But in effect, each of the warrant articles is identical in that it adds convey to care, custody, and control, which exists today. Mr. Wanzo.
I just had a couple of questions. So the Village Center District is in full force, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
But the architectural preservation, they have not adopted bylaws as of yet, their own guidelines. Is that correct?
I believe their guidelines are pretty close, but even without their specific guidelines, which they're going to have to present to the Board of Selectmen and get the Board of Selectmen sign off on to put in force, which clearly the Board of Selectmen could make sure that happens before they enter into any agreement with the sale of the properties, but they still have within the APD bylaw itself what's supposed to be reviewed and what the goal is. So they could probably do a review without having all their guidelines in place, I wouldn't recommend it, but again, the framework is most certainly
Right, but
there.
the framework is the bylaw itself,
Yeah.
but the guidelines that committee is designed to come up with has not been finalized. And I keep seeing your hand raising in my peripheral vision here.
I was skulking in the corner, so I wasn't sure if you saw me the first time. The APDC has forwarded their final draft regulations to Town Council for review, and they have scheduled a public hearing for May 16th. I was under the impression that they had forwarded it, the chair had forwarded it to either Elaine or to the board themselves. If not, I can make sure a copy gets to the town manager and have her share those with you. They are completed in draft form, and they're under council review.
Okay.
So
they're near completion.
They're as close to completion as they can get without being, fully vetted.
These are not gotcha questions.
No.
So people are aware. And so, just a couple more questions. So all of these 4 buildings that people are talking about all of them are in the Village Center District, correct? Are all of them in the Architectural Preservation District?
Correct.
Okay, so they both apply. Okay. The only thing I would say is, and I think it's just superfluous, I think the old primary building was given that this was conveyed and given care custody a long time ago, because that's how we entered
With the
into the
Eagle
HUD
House, yeah, the
proposal.
Eagle.
So
We agree.
Okay.
But we felt that what was passed at the special town meeting may have undone that. So we just want to be totally careful that we do in fact have that ability.
As someone who voted against doing this for the reasons that was said in public comment, but also because the architectural preservation guidelines were not ready yet, I'm much more comfortable with these. I would hope, and I can see how somebody could make the distinction, as you said, it doesn't preclude the Board of Selectmen from having all those things, charrettes, and everything, but it doesn't require it either. But I think Mr. McQuaid is right, that obviously anything that gets proposed there is going to have a public hearing, just not with this board, it would be at the planning board or the APD.
Both.
Right. So I feel much more comfortable now than when these were brought up at a special town meeting. I also think that the attendance of an annual town meeting is usually better than an annual, than a special, So I feel comfortable with these at this point. I would question, by the way, one last thing. Again, there was a deed restriction because of the Ritter, because how it was given to the town, and I don't know how that affects that. Uh-oh, the hand again. You should sit a lot closer, by the way.
It's much more fun to skulk. The Ritter building specifically, that question was raised back at the time that it was occupied by what is now the land use departments, and the opinion that came from KP at that time is that restriction, there wasn't really a restriction. The use was executed and was no longer necessary, so the building was free to be used as appropriate and is not required to be retained or be a library, as was often quoted, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Thank you.
I want to thank Damon for coming forward. I think this was very helpful to go through what can happen and what's prohibited. I still have some concerns, and specifically relative to the Ritter Memorial Building and the Town Hall. And they really stem, I'm honestly not as concerned about the primary school building, because I think, quite frankly, that building is crumbling, and I think we need to do something with it. I think it's extremely unfortunate that it's sitting there vacant. However, I'm very concerned about the parking for the Historical Society building. And I think that before we were to convey that primary school building, I think it's imperative that we carve out a piece of that area for the Historical Society. I think that that's a building that houses the history of our community, and I think to convey the property as it's currently described and as it's divided is a concern to me. And I would want to see a parking area for at least, an adequate number of spaces for the society building be established before we were to convey that parcel. The Brooks House...
May I just address that one point?
Yeah.
I think if this is approved, the board has the ability to convey it in any way they see fit, so they could convey a piece of it to the historical and another piece for an RFP or whatever. We would have that ability to do that.
Okay. The Brooks House, it's very minimal use at this point, so I also think it makes sense, rather than trying to maintain buildings that are not currently being utilized, it may make sense to convey them, and I think given the restrictions of the various districts, I think it may make sense. However, I continue to be concerned about the use of the town hall and the Ritter Memorial Building. When the building reuse started, we talked about a couple different options. We talked about potentially adding on to this building and modifying this building. Then we talked about the TCP and dividing it and using some for municipal purposes and some for rental purposes. However, I don't know, and this is really an open-ended question, I don't know that that was ever presented to the town to get their comments and their feeling on that. Secondly, I don't know that an official decision has been made by this board. And finally, I don't know that we've identified the potential cost of that. So in my opinion, I'd want to have all of that answered before we were to convey our municipal buildings.
The plan to move forward in and consolidate into the TC Passios for municipal offices was approved at town meeting, was approved by this board and then approved at town meeting. The price was estimated, not engineering estimated, but when it was compared to other alternatives, which included several, 4.5 different alternatives that included town hall, Ritter, the old primary space, purpose-built, et cetera. The original plans talked about the costs of each of those options and the how many of the criteria each of those options met relative to, we were looking to consolidate, we were looking to have adequate parking, we were looking, there were several criteria we did. So what we had proceeded with and what the town meeting approved was to move towards consolidating into the Passios. And as a result, this building and the Ritter would at some point in that process become underutilized or vacant. All right? Now, two points just to finish and then clearly want some input. One is if we change direction on that and say we're not going to consolidate, then the Passios becomes an excess space. If we were to keep where we are now, we don't have enough space for what we need to do, including the pack growth and some other things that were built into the move. But also, we are most likely losing our tenants or some of our tenants in the Passios, so that would become an underutilized building that we'd have to do. So our proposal, which was approved by town meeting, was to work toward moving into the Passios. Now, there was a cost and no funding source.
What was the estimated cost?
$4.7 million. And that wasn't engineered, it was just apples to apples with what it would cost using the same rule of thumb architectural numbers to renovate this building, the Ritter, purpose-build a building at the site of the old primary, et cetera. And that was clear in the TAP A study that was presented to this board and to the town meeting when we were authorized to go to the next step, which was the market study. All right. If we choose to change direction, the Building Reuse Committee has made their recommendation, and I think we can choose as a town to go a different direction. But ultimately, we need somewhere between 20,000 and 25,000 square feet, including the growth of the PAC studios. And we don't have that in any one place other than the Passios. So our plan was to go with the Passios with some renovation. The original plan that was approved was to demolish one wing of the Passios and make it approximately the size we were looking for. And we've since said, maybe we want to wait on that for a number of reasons, not the least of which is we could get some rent to help us during a transition period. But that is a possibility, and that would, if you did demolish that wing, although it is expense involved, it would create additional parking perhaps, or green space, or whatever currently that wing sits on, all right? But if you went in a different direction, that would then become an underutilized or excess surplus building.
And
I don't know if that answers your question.
And I know
but that's
that
where we
just
are.
to the demolition part, I know that the Boys and Girls Club was one organization that was looking to, because they're growing out of the space they're in, and they currently use the gym now on many days, that they were looking to move to that location. So that would, and that would free up a building that you could put to use for other things for the town, so.
Mr. Chair, if I
Boys and
may,
Girls Club is interested in moving into the patios,
Yes,
possibly?
yes. They'd like to explore that because they're kind of constrained by property. They're constrained by the programming they can do because of the plot of land that it's on, and they already use the gym area, which is usable 365 days a year, as opposed to being outside. And at the patios, there would be some outdoor space that could possibly be utilized without them having to get another person hired to go away from their current site. So there's many things that they were looking at
Does
doing.
the town own the Boys and Girls Club building?
Yes.
Yes. The 4.7 million, you said that wasn't, how is that number arrived at?
Do you want help with that? It's an architectural rule of thumb type of.
so they did a lot of square foot numbers when they were looking at their values. I believe that one probably came out to, might have been, it's 50,000 square feet, and it's 4 million divided by 50,000.
It actually divides by construction and soft costs. It was 3.8 for conceptual construction cost and 955,000 for soft costs, for a total of 4,775,000. And there's quite a bit of engineering backup in here as to how they arrived at that, but it's to be able to compare it to what it would cost to put a wing on the Ritter, or what it would cost to renovate the town hall. It's a dollars per square foot kind of calculation.
So I remember, and maybe I'm just drawing a blank, but I remember discussions at town meeting about various options, but there was an actual vote to move forward with making the TCP the town hall.
There was a vote to make that our objective and to look for funding sources.
Okay, and that was...
Because there's so many variables in this whole project that you
Yeah.
have to kind of pick one so that you can begin to do the assessments. So at town meeting in May of...
2 years ago now, right?
Yeah, 15, 16, I have it. It's actually in my town meeting presentation, but May 2015, they approved the Village District and the Architectural Protection District, and also approved conceptually buying into going into the patios, and to continue to do a market survey to figure out how to fund that.
Yeah, we had
So-
Cafe Associates at that meeting.
Just again, for technical reasons, I don't think that there was a specific vote on.
I don't either.
There was a discussion about the conceptual piece. That was certainly the part of the
Well, it couldn't have been a vote
conceptual.
without a dollars and cents. I mean, we didn't know what it was gonna cost or where we were gonna pay for it.
Right, no, I'm just, again,
Yeah.
I'm for that plan. I'm just saying that there really was no town meeting vote on that plan other than.
No, of course, right.
And that's my concern, quite frankly, with the potential of selling the town hall and the Ritter. And again, I'm not necessarily opposed to the primary school and the Brooks House. The primary school, I would want to ensure that we kept parking for the Historical Society. But my concern is we're moving ahead with the fact that there was a vote to move forward with the TCP, and quite frankly, I don't recall that. I remember a conceptual idea of doing that, and it seemed to make sense, and we were going to go forward with a market analysis, which we then changed because it didn't make sense to do that. But before I would entertain the idea of selling the town hall and the Ritter Memorial Building, I would want an actual vote, and I think that before we can go to town meeting for an actual vote, while I understand the architectural idea of the 4.7 million, I don't know what that process should be, whether it's a vote from town meeting to move forward with the TCP being town hall with an up to amount, or whether we need to go forward with an actual engineering study on moving the town offices into TCP and what that cost would be, and maybe we need a town meeting article to fund that. But I think, in my opinion, before we go forward with the potential of selling the Ritter Memorial Building and the Town Hall, we need to know what the cost of moving to TCP is, and we need a vote from the town that that's what they want to do for their town hall. That's my opinion.
And I suggest that as of the town meeting, the only people that are going to do that is us, this board. So if that's what we need,
Well, and we may need another committee, frankly, to go forward, or we may just need to do an RFP. But in my opinion, before I would vote to potentially sell the two buildings that are the cornerstones in this community, I would need a vote from the townspeople that is in fact, they do want to move their town offices into the TCP, and they know what that cost is.
But I don't think you can ask the townspeople to make a vote like that without data. And
I
the
agree.
only way we're going to get that data is if this group picks a direction and collects the data towards that direction.
Well, I think it's sort of a chicken and the egg. I mean, if the engineering study comes back and says that moving to the TCP is going to be 9 million, then my feeling is we stay where we are. If it is in fact 4.7 million and we sell these two buildings and we can almost achieve that number, then potentially that makes sense. But I don't know that there was a vote from the townspeople that what they wanted was that the TCP to be their town hall.
But if I may interject, obviously, the town can't sell the Ritter Building and the Town Hall while we house our offices. We're not going to dislodge ourselves so we have some roving virtual town hall around. So there's going to be a project. There needs to be a project that would need funding, significant funding, that would require a town meeting vote. So you, by definition, by the way it has to work, you will get what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, how do we move Town Hall? We don't sell it, and then what are we going to sell it and lease it to ourselves while we think about it? I mean, that's obviously part of a bigger plan. I think they're asking to give the conveyance now so somebody, and that's protected. It's in the district, as Mr. McQuaid said, and what you're safeguarding against has to happen just by virtue of that we have to move town offices somewhere before we sell them anyway.
Well, I would be opposed to Article 22, and I would be opposed to Article 24, Article 22 and Article 25 at this point. I would not necessarily be opposed to Article 23 or Article 24. Article 24, I have some concerns, and that's specifically relative to the Historical Society property. And certainly, boards change, people change, and if and when that were to happen, it may be a very different board that's sitting. And I don't know that Historical Society parking lot would be protected. So I have some hesitation regarding Article 24, moving it forward as it's currently stated. And I don't know whether it would be possible through an amendment on town meeting floor to put a stipulation that X amount of parking spaces be reserved for the Historical Society. I don't know. That certainly would make me more comfortable.
Well, then we can do that. If that passes, the board can convey it in any way it sees fit.
I understand that, Jamie, but you're putting that decision in 5 people that this may not happen, as you said, just because we have the...
That's exactly true, Mrs. Bertram. But I'm rather putting it in 5 people that can do their homework and base it on data than on a town meeting floor where you're winging it.
Well...
Now, if this board wants to put together a plan that we bring forward and ask town meeting to up or down, that's fine. That's what I've been trying to do for 4 years. But I don't think you craft what the town strategy is on the town meeting floor.
Well, we're not going to agree, so...
Okay, fine.
We're going to just have to agree to disagree.
Could you add that stipulation about the old primary school sooner rather than at the time of conveyance? Can you just...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You don't
we
need
could do
to.
it in June.
As worded, Mrs. Luck, if you passed Article 24, the next meeting, well, you'd have to wait for the Attorney General to approve all the town meeting votes, but once you get that in 30 days, you could do it right after that, and you could convey the parking lot as you see fit with the Historical Society after
So
that.
you don't have to wait till it's conveyed, we could do it right away.
You have that, right, because it's under the ownership of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, thank
Is
you.
that, I want to make sure that is correct, right?
I believe that's true.
Okay.
But it may or may not be this board. It may be a very different board. And personally, my opinion is that we cannot do it until the Attorney General approves the passage of this article.
But how long does that take generally?
30 days. 30 to 45 days.
Heather?
Usually the Attorney General reviews zoning and bylaw changes. So this one, I would have to ask Town Council instead. Yeah.
It was months though, but when, the one I know that took the longest was the employee thing that changed the bylaws.
And it took months.
It took like 6 months.
It took months.
But
It wasn't
would be
30 days.
before
I'd also like to just go on record and say that the likelihood of town hall ever being sold is nil. And if it were the pleasure of this board to take that one off and pass over that warrant article, I'd be fine with that, because number one, there's no market for it, number two, there's no parking, and number three, there are some commitments that were made when we accepted federal money that would restrict it beyond our ability to do anything with it. Now, this board will now own what to do with it.
I was just going to say, then what do we do with it?
Well, good question.
Mr. Toll, as far as, a couple of things. As far as town hall, I think we should leave it on there because I think we need to find a really responsible, personally, I feel we need to find a responsible nonprofit to take care of the building, who we can sell it to for $1. Because, like you said, we're not going to be able to sell it to somebody who has a commercial interest in it because it doesn't have nearly the same commercial value as it does historic and cultural value. So it's finding somebody who's a good steward, who can be a good steward. We can put the thermometer sign out front and start raising some money for it, fix the town hall, get it back in public service. I think that's what we're going to have to do, in my mind, how we're going to have to take care of this building. But certainly hanging on to it forever isn't doing it any good because it's kind of getting worse by the day. But, and again, just to go back to the Historic Society parking and the Ritter versus the old primary, I guess from my planning board hat and my architect hat, I feel like there's different ways to accomplish making sure the Historic Society gets their parking besides giving them land for parking. I feel like making sure it's integrated in whatever parking plan happens for the new, whatever happens over there, is a more efficient use of space, a better use of space, will be more flexible parking rather than petitioned off, this is your parking. And again, I've always hoped that the Ritter and the old primary school could potentially get sold together because, again, we're going down the rabbit hole, but the Ritter building, to be used for its highest and best use, is going to be limited by the amount of parking that it has associated with that site. So if it were to be paired, or maybe somehow we work it in where there's municipal parking up in the front of the old primary site or whatever that could contribute to the parking of the Ritter building, I feel like we're going to get a much better use out of that site holistically if they could be somehow sold together. So that's my only concern as far as breaking them up.
That's a valid point, because specifically relative to parking.
And I believe that, in all honesty, I think that the Historical Society doesn't get served well by 3 or 4 spots because their limited hours require 1 or 2 spots, but then when they have an event, it requires 30 spots. And I think an integrated plan works better as long as it's committed and they can feel comfortable that they have it. Okay. I had hoped, we agreed that we were going to make our recommendation at town meeting after the presentation. I can't emphasize enough that I think that this is a very complex issue with a lot of data and a lot of trade-offs and a lot of variables, and it's difficult to do that, to make the decisions, even to set a direction, in a large group. I think that a group like this, or the town manager, or whoever we hire or work with, can formulate a plan that we can then bring to town meeting, or have public hearings, or run, feel comfortable that the protections that are in planning and architectural protection are there. But what our objective here was to broaden our opportunities, that's all. Thank you. The next annual town meeting thing has to do with Articles 34, 35.
Okay, I can take it from here. One of your handouts, it starts with Article 2, Town Administration at the heading. It was a loose leaf. Okay. So Selectman Ebersol was kind enough to put the language in that we did not have at the last meeting. So the last meeting, you just saw a very brief synopsis on each of the articles within the bylaws that are being proposed by the Bylaw Review Committee to be changed. So this actually has the bolded language and the strike-throughs to denote deletions or additions to the bylaws.
Yeah, so that's section 1, bold 1. I don't know. First of all, I don't even know if that's really doable.
I was just going to say, I don't know that that's doable either.
And again, when you say something like that, and by the way, for people at home, it adds to the town administration section, minutes of all town boards and committees must be approved in 30 days and periodic review of executive sessions quarterly. So the second part of that, the periodic review of executive sessions quarterly, I have no problem with, okay? But there are some town committees or multi-member bodies that only meet every 30 days. And then in the summer, they don't meet at all. So to put a bylaw in when you have to make exceptions because they're not meeting seems to go against what should be in the bylaw then. And we should do what beside the fact that the state passed a whole open meeting law and has requirements in there for minutes as well. I just think this is an undue burden that's going to wind up not being followed because it can't be followed. And if we limit it to that, we may limit our pool of people who are limited already who want to volunteer.
Right. We may affect our ability to gain volunteers.
Everything else in this document, I'm perfectly fine with.
Who actually is proposing this language? Is that the committee?
The Bylaw Review Committee.
Okay.
You know, I agree, it's just impractical. And one thing, it says in 30 days, they're not saying 30 days from what? I know that you mentioned that last time, Amy.
Yeah,
From when?
Yeah.
And who becomes the minutes police? Who makes sure that happens? Is it, is the chairman of that particular committee the one who's responsible? Is the clerk the one that's responsible? And if they don't do it, what are the
That's the real
What
thing.
happens?
That
What
part
happens?
of the phrase, that question is the most important. What happens if you don't follow it? Because if you're appointing somebody, and let's just say, as you proposed, it's the clerk or the secretary of the committee that's responsible, and there's some kind of penalty involved with that, well, guess how many people are going to volunteer to be secretary of that committee? All right?
Right.
So, we want to encourage people to be, I personally, for years, have wanted people to encourage people to join, and I think this actually may have an adverse effect on that.
I think it definitely will have an adverse effect.
And it's not because I don't want minutes to be approved before anybody, obviously I want all of them to be as transparent as possible. I just think that this kind of restriction, you want to say 90 days, fine. I can go with another date set if you want to put a number.
But you know, like the state open meeting laws that they just passed says it should be done in a reasonable time.
Right.
You know, the state.
And I think it should be, you know, corresponding to the frequency of the
meetings.
board's or the committee's meetings.
Yeah.
If you meet every week, then it would be a lot shorter than if you meet every month, or if, you know, Cultural Commission meets
every 6
4
months or
6
something,
months,
yeah.
right. So.
Maybe that's the way to address it. I don't want to do their work, but maybe it's by the second meeting after it occurred, or something like that, or.
Again, you know, I think that if someone were to request minutes, under the open meeting law, even a draft of the minutes has to be provided. So whether it's just handwritten.
If available, not has to be if available.
Right, no.
Yeah, well, we read that today. If available, they have to be supplied within 10 days.
Well, there should be a draft in
There should
any
be-
form. It can be a written form.
It can be handwritten notes, it can, but there should be some record, whether it's bullet points that somebody wrote down and then they're going to write from, but there should be some written record of a meeting, or computer-generated record of a
or
meeting,
a
or a
recording.
voice recording.
Right.
And my understanding of the law is that that has to be provided, regardless of what form it's in. Those drafts, and whether they're approved or not, they have to be made available.
Well, like I said, we read the open meeting law today just because of this, and it said, if available, they have to be handed over within 10 days.
So I would strike the bolded section. I would not be in favor of that change in section 1 at this point. I am not in favor of that change.
To the point that Mr. Toll made earlier about wordsmithing on town meeting floor, I think that this is covered under state laws, and we've been doing minutes, and is every committee up to date and perfect on their minutes? No, but, you know, I don't think that's going to address that. It's just going to frighten people.
Right.
Right, and it's really impractical to set up a rule that you can't enforce.
Right.
So yeah, what you need, I think what we want to do is get back to them, other than that, or we can't recommend approval as it stands.
Okay.
Okay?
Are there any other comments on any of the other
The ones I'm
changes?
fine with.
Okay.
Where was the one that says obsolete? Is that in this section?
And just as a denotation on this, this will be split into substantive and non-substantive. So some of these are just repealing because they're already covered in the charter, it's non-substantive, but something like Article 2 with the minutes, that's a substantive change.
There was one of them that said that the bylaw review committee can just eliminate bylaws that are obsolete, and I think it must be in this section somewhere, and I think who determines what's obsolete? I
didn't see that.
I didn't see that either.
Geez, I wish I had my notes I took today.
It's Article 34, first sentence.
It's in the,
To address typographical errors, corrections, repeal of obsolete bylaws.
Where?
Is it?
Where are you?
Where is 34?
Yeah.
The actual warrant article. yeah.
I'm looking at it, where is it?
All right, so Article 34, repeal of obsolete bylaws. I mean,
But that, it will reference these sections. The wording of the article itself is to identify that the recommended changes are repeal of obsolete
The ones they've
references.
already crossed out. The
Correct.
ones they've already eliminated. So it's basically referring to this document.
Right, both of these, both 34 and
This and this tie
35
together.
refer to this document as the town manager just said.
So,
Some of them
okay.
don't change the meaning, you're eliminating things that are redundant because
Right.
they're covered other places. Those are non-substantive changes.
So what they're proposing to repeal actually says repeal section 6, repeal section 8, repeal section 12. So that's what we're proposing, specific to this.
repeal of obsolete bylaws as laid out in this document.
Yes.
But that's already done. I mean, in other words, if you look
It
at
says
this.
as shown in the handout.
Right.
Entitled Bylaw Review Committee Recommendations, although this one is not titled.
Right.
The eventually titled.
Okay, okay. So just anything that's obsolete. as
Right
pointed
now,
out in this one.
as of right now. Right.
As pointed out in this document.
Right, because we have to have the bylaw review committee periodically as per charter. So there may be another repeal for obsolete bylaws, but it will be specific at the time that the bylaw review committee
Okay.
does it.
Thank you.
Just for my own curiosity, when they says amend all language references to man and men to gender-neutral language, did we decide what that?
Yeah, what is gender neutral?
Have we decided what pronoun we're going to use? Are we going to use persons or something like that?
No, everything I've seen is her, him, or, yeah.
So they're, okay, well,
Okay.
it's going against their own bylaw. All right.
Okay, so we're okay on 34, 35? You have what you need?
Yes.
Okay, and then you want to walk us through the review of motions?
Mr. Chairman, before,
Yes.
could I make a recommendation that before we do that, we've had our town accountant and our
Yeah.
tax collector sitting here for a reasonably long time. Can we do the tax title discussion before we do go back to the motions, just so that...
I'm fine with that.
Good thinking.
All right, so we're going to move on to our current business item that has to do with tax title and foreclosure discussion. The town manager is setting up a presentation.
I have a handout I'd like to just pass out to... These are my notes, I didn't put my name on them, but...
Oh, I just changed that.
Wow. Hold on a second.
Technical difficulties right now.
Your call is important to us. Please stand by.
Let me try this one again. There we go. Damon, could you move that projector like a little bit closer to the screen? So, thank you. All right. So this is a update from a previous meeting we had in March where the treasurer collector came to present a list of tax title properties to do a tax title lien sale. So I just want to do a little overview, and you have it before you. So under Mass General Law, Chapter 60, Section 52, where the treasurer is authorized to do tax title sales. I wanted to go over what a tax assignment sale is, who's authorized to do it, and why do it. So it's a sale of the tax liens that have gone through the tax taking process but have not been foreclosed. Selling the lien does not mean a transfer of the ownership. Who is authorized to do the tax title assignment sale? Under Mass General Law, Chapter 60, Section 52, the treasurer has the authority to assign and transfer tax titles individually or bundled to the highest bidder at a public auction. And why would we want to do this? At the time of the sale of the tax title, the town recoups all the delinquent taxes, interests, and all associated costs, including legal, advertising, and recording costs. The benefits of doing a tax title assignment sale are the direct impact this has on the collection rate of real estate taxes. And the list of properties that the tax treasurer collector gave you is approximately $1.28 million worth of tax revenue. At the close of the fiscal year in which the tax title sale is done, the premiums from the tax title sales will positively affect our free cash. There'll be an infuse of free cash. By not letting the tax titles grow and inflate with interest, it will ensure that the property does not end up being foreclosed and the taxes owed will not exceed the assessed value of that land. Recouping these delinquent taxes reflects positively to bonding agencies, is good financial management, and the town does not need to expend any money to move the property through the tax foreclosure process. The costs of doing a tax title assignment sale are, essentially there are no costs for the public auction. The town does not have to pay for the legal, the advertising, that's all recouped at the sale of the auction. Giving over the right to foreclose on the property to the purchaser of the lien as long as they stay current on all future taxes. So this identified as that was something the board brought up at the last meeting as a potential cost. So this slide just goes over the process to show you exactly what is done from start to finish, from the time it's determined there will be an auction to the auction, the sale of the properties, the tax title sale. And just a note that this is the minimum statutory requirements. The treasurer collector has committed to sending a letter at least 30 days prior to the sale of the auction to notify the property owner. So they have every opportunity to pay what they owe on their taxes. So a breakdown of what it costs for closing a property, if we looked at, if we want to hold on to any of these properties, what it would cost the town. So the average cost to move a property through land court foreclosure process is $3,500. And that's a minimum price. It can go upwards of that amount depending on how complicated the property is. If there's multiple owners, how they have to be contacted and such, it adds to the cost of doing a foreclosure process. Currently, the town budgets.
Flop those numbers on that one. You got to flop the numbers.
Currently, the town only budgets $8,000 a year for tax title foreclosures. So that's
have we been doing 2 a year?
I would refer to Mylene for that question, but I believe we have 4 properties right now that have gone through foreclosure.
Point.
So you've been doing it for the past couple of years?
Yeah.
The last foreclosure that was done was under my predecessor's fiscal year 2014. She had foreclosed 4 properties.
In 1
2015,
year, in 2 years, and...
when she took over the office. So she started in 2012, I believe, and she left 2014.
Okay, so she did like 2 a year.
And what was the revenue from those foreclosure properties and those auctions?
I think it's the same amount as now, because it never changed from my understanding.
No, my question is if the properties were foreclosed on, were they then auctioned?
Not yet.
Okay, so we did the foreclosure process, but we have not yet auctioned them.
Yeah, so they just got foreclosed on that fiscal year.
So it would be helpful to know what those were and whether we want to auction them.
So presumably,
And
if
which
it-
is-
if it costs $3,500, presumably, if the property is worth more than, $10,000, and
It's worth our,
eventually it's worth,
yeah.
would you agree with that or not agree with that?
It depends on, if they're gonna look at what's the assessment and what's the, how much is the interest. They normally, from my I've been getting from the taxpayers, and when they want me to foreclose a property or do the auction, they ask for tax statements on how much is the interest, how much is the total principal, and sometimes, one example is that LMN gas station, and I told them it's 100 something, and then, well, what if I just give you 50,000? The town will, it's like, it's gonna be an auction off, it's gonna be settled on what town wants to have on that one. So it really depends on what the board or, to tell me how much gonna be sold, and from there, how much auctioneer is willing to pay for that. It really varies, it doesn't have really a exact amount, because it depends on how many auctioneer would like to pay and how much they are willing to pay.
But you can set a minimum bid.
You're talking about tax title.
Auctions.
But I'm talking about foreclosing.
Oh.
So if we foreclose and it costs us $3,500, if the property is worth more than $10,000,
say it's worth a $200,000 property.
If the property sells for $10,000.
It's valued at it.
But if
it sells for it.
But you can set a minimum bid when you do an auction.
Can I just add to that? It also depends on what's owed.
Right.
For taxes on that.
Right,
So
right.
if what's owed on taxes exceeds the assessed value or what we can get at auction, we're gonna lose.
That makes sense. I mean, what I'm saying is that there's very, very basic and stringent calculations you could use. And say, yeah, obviously, if the taxes are owed or more than the value, then, there's not a lot you're going to be able to do with that.
Right.
Very much, so.
Right. But it's also one that probably they're not going to want to bind a lien on.
Right, well, exactly. So
This company is, a lien company is not going to want to buy a piece of property, and the one in the list that I just passed out, there's a piece of property that far exceeds, it's 213 Island Road. The assessed value is $1,600. The amount owed on it for taxes is $38,134. No tax lien purchaser is going to want that piece of property. Because there's no way, it's not a buildable lot, there's no way they're ever going to receive $38,134 for that parcel. So if we were to, and it doesn't make sense to go through the $3,500 for that property. So, there are some that just may not make sense, and that is one of them.
What are your options with something like that?
The only option is to foreclose. If those company are not, interested on some other properties that we're gonna tax there, they're gonna go full on a foreclosure.
Or we could do nothing, right?
Right.
I mean, if it's.
Right. The value is $1,600.
Foreclosing and spending $3,500, we get a property that's valued at $1,600.
Keep in mind, every fiscal year, it's gonna gain taxes, they're gonna create a tax.
Right, but it just means
it's just a number.
It's just a number. You're just not going to get that number. And this lien company is not going to want that property when nobody's going to want to buy that lien. They're going to want to buy the liens. For example, if you look at some of these properties, somebody owes $8,481, but the property's worth $207,000.
Yeah.
That's a good deal. If they can buy that lien for $8,481 and the individual doesn't pay the taxes the following year, they've now bought the right to foreclose themselves, and they gain a property that's worth $207,000, even if they have to spend $3,500 for $12,000, they got a property that's worth $207,000.
That's the reason I present this to the board, so that they can pick and choose which one they like to hold on, so that if we want to foreclose we will go to that, but anything that the board will not like to foreclose, to sell the property, we can go to the other side, and at least try it from there.
Going back to that island, do you ask the neighbors if they want to buy it?
You can't do that under law. You have to auction it.
Yeah, you have to advertise to everybody.
It has to be advertised, and it has to be auctioned.
You probably could informally ask what interest is.
But you can't, I don't think that you still have to go through the auction.
No, I understand that part.
Because I know for a fact that there are people that are interesed in that property.
Yeah, a lot of people is calling me. That's why I'm here now, so that we can at least, boils down to what we can do about this title, and we don't want to do. That's the reason I'm here, so that I get your opinion on what I can and cannot do, and where I fall, to start collecting those tax title, at least put back something on the revenue of the town. That's
Well,
that's
in
the
my,
only thing.
okay. And in my opinion, there are some significant properties on here, and honestly, I've gone through it, but I wanted to go back through it, but with the death in my family, I haven't had a chance to go in the detail that I wanted to. But looking at this, there are a number of properties that I really question whether it makes sense to sell the liens on this property.
Well, keep in mind, when I send those letters, that doesn't mean we will get those property. They might come forward and do a tax agreement, and, they might do something like try to sell their property and pay.
Well, there's some that I don't know that we want a tax agreement, and specifically relative to some properties on Hollis Road, I would be opposed to a tax agreement on those properties.
Unfortunately, in the land court,
Yeah.
when those people come forward to that, they will just give them tax agreement.
Okay, well,
Unfortunately, the land court might, they are sided with taxpayer. They cannot just say no, because they're not foreclosure.
Right.
They're going to the foreclosure.
And that's fine, but in my opinion, I would be opposed to selling those liens. And, on the two properties that are identified on Hollis Road, I would be extremely opposed to selling those liens. There are other properties that I would also be opposed to selling, actually, just about everyone on this list, but 991 Lancaster, I would be very opposed.
Just tell me, and they'll remove it.
But I would be very opposed to that. I would think that we'd want to work, that's an important piece of property for our community, and I think that we may want to look at other avenues and other options. The other thing that I think we have to look at is there's a property on here that provides access to town forest. While I understand that there may be a loss in tax revenue, I think the potential benefit may outweigh that loss in tax revenue. There are also, you have to consider on some of these larger parcels, the potential for development. And I think that given, it's something I think we have to look at as we've heard over and over from the citizens of Lunenburg that they want to maintain the rural character of this community. If we start selling the liens for 10-acre parcels, 17-acre parcels, 13-acre parcels, I don't know that we're going to be able to retain that rural character. So I think we've got to look at that, and we've got to balance that. So, in looking through this list, there are a number of parcels that I think we really have to think long and hard at. And I also think that, while I understand it may be $3,500 to move through foreclosure, again, if they owe $8,000 in taxes, but the property's worth $207,000, to my way of thinking, it makes sense to spend that $3,500, because the potential at auction, you could set a minimum bid of $150,000 on that property, and you're going to get it. Properties in Lunenburg are few and far between, and there is a real marketability for these properties. So, I would be opposed to selling it to a lien company, because quite frankly, it's a business. The reason they want to buy these liens is because they're hoping that the individuals aren't going to pay the taxes, and then they go through the foreclosure process, and then they're going to sell the property. It's a money-making business. They're not doing it out of the kindness of their heart to hand over $1.2 million. They're doing it because there's an opportunity there for them to make money.
The company that we met with, Mylene and I initially, only 0.2% of the properties that they buy the tax lien sales go through foreclosure. So what they find is, they're identifying parcels that they're going to collect the same as the town would, the interest rate, moving it towards foreclosure, but only 0.2% of those properties actually end up foreclosed. They're not in the business of owning the properties and then selling them. They're like a bank. They're collecting interest, and the goal is that the property owner pays up. And that's essentially the goal of what the town is trying to do, is get these property owners current on their taxes, recoup the delinquent taxes that the town is owed, and move them forward if that process is not successful. Because we need to get this money back towards our tax levy. If I can just continue on with the slides. So based on the list of the properties that the Conservation Commission put forward, it would cost the town a minimum of $56,000 to move them
All of them.
All of them.
If we did all of them.
Minimum, meaning
If we did all
more
of them.
complicated ones will cost more. And this would be a deficit of approximately $180,000 in abated taxes. And that is because if we end up in the business of owning these properties as town-owned parcels, we have to take whatever is owed on those taxes and abate that. And that comes right off, so well, now the law has changed that all the overlays can be consolidated, but usually it's by year you have an abatement, allotted abatement amount. The other piece of that is that this would be a reduction of $1.2 million in our tax levy.
Kind of.
Sort of.
No.
Right, because we're not getting it now.
Well, no. If we owned that.
Oh, if we owned it, yeah.
That would, the
Yeah,
assessed
it wouldn't-
values, if you take the total assessed values of all those parcels.
Of the properties that conservation.
Right, we can no longer assess those.
Right.
So they become, that is a reduction of our tax levy.
I don't think it would be our intent, it wouldn't be my intention.
To do all
For the
of
3
them.
weeks that I'll still be here, that it would not be my intention that we would want to own them, So there are some that I'm going to fit into after going through this while we were having the other conversation, all your slides, I don't want to preclude your slides, but, I think some will want the tax title lien, and some of them we want to go through the foreclosing for different reasons.
And some we may want to retain.
So the foreclosure process itself can take up to 2 years in land court. The original owner has a 1-year redemption period after the final court ruling to redeem the amount owed on the property.
Does that make it 3 years, basically?
Essentially.
Okay. So you're clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
They can still petition the court after that final foreclosure, 1 year after. Land court protects owners by allowing all available options to set up a payment agreement, so that's by law, and as Mylene
That's what Mylene was
referenced.
saying, right? Yeah.
And during the foreclosure process, we're not accruing the 16% interest. And like I referenced earlier, the percentage of tax titles that actually end up in foreclosed is 0.2%. So I think once a letter is sent out, you're going to see an influx of people knowing that the town is serious about moving to that next step. They're going to come in and pay their taxes or set up a tax agreement with the treasurer collector.
Okay.
So on those,
So I have a question about that. If that's true,
Why don't we send the letter now?
then why don't we just try to foreclose, and then, why would we sell the tax title liens then? Is it just how fast we get the money? Is that what you're saying? Is that the benefit?
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, reason being, you're seeing a lot of tax title here. That's not done for in a lot of people because the town doesn't do anything about it. They kind of like slack back on their payments. Even sometimes when they do a tax agreement with me, and they said they're supposed to do a monthly payments, I've seen my tax agreement not in compliance, I've been checking on them once in a while and make sure that there's a monthly payments. Unfortunately, they're not doing what they should be. And then when the letter was sent with my previous predecessors, and they're gonna go in a compliant tax agreement again, and then falls on the same category, that's why it's just...
So can I ask a basic question? As Mrs. Bertram said, the people who would buy the tax title lien, they're not doing this because they love people and they want people to stay in their homes.
They're
want
making
money,
business, yeah.
Okay? So do they, aren't they going to be faced with the same problems we would be faced with? Why would they buy the tax titles if people might get into an agreement and just not pay? Do they eventually have more legal rights than the town does? Does anybody know?
Well,
They can do the foreclosure.
What happened is they will make all the real estate taxes current when we go to this tax sale lien. That will fall out if they didn't pay the real estate taxes current on a piece of property that the lien was owned by them. So basically, they will pay 100% of all the taxes that is owed, similar to if the taxpayer comes forward to us and sell it.
Right.
So then when they they buy the lien, they'll make sure that all the taxes are being paid current for all those new
And if they
coming.
aren't, and if they
Yes.
aren't, they've bought the right to foreclose. Correct.
It's their rights, whatever they do.
Right.
Because our taxes are being paid current. It's similar to the mortgage company, escrowing account.
Sure, but my question is, why would the landowner pay the tax title lien holder their money and not pay us? What would be, wouldn't they fall behind just like they fall behind with you?
Well, yes, and then they bought the right to foreclose.
Yeah, but-
Instead of,
But we
for
just
us
found out that
trying.
the percentage that actually foreclosed are like
Right,
0.2%.
it's like instead of us trying to get the money from them, they will be the one that's trying to collect the money from them.
Because they immediately start the foreclosure process, and you know, they know that this company is serious, and so they make an arrangement with this company, and they come to some sort of payment arrangement with this company so that they can stay in their homes.
And just to add, they have no additional rights. They have the same rights under the Mass General Law as the town. There's no additional rights, or they can't exceed what's set out for through Mass General Law, the tax title company.
Okay.
Right.
Maybe can they foreclose more cheaply? Because
They
they're
may
set
have
up in
the
business?
staff, meaning lawyers on
They just do
staff
it.
Yes,
and
yeah, it's
a
a
research
business.
team to.
It's their business.
Right.
They do it better than we do it.
Right.
So
They have
there's
more
some added
budget,
incentive.
Right. And people know that.
Yes.
The homeowners know
I
that.
didn't mean to get off track.
No, but I had a question. Of the 4 properties that we have in the foreclosure process, are any of them completed, the process completed?
It's been foreclosed, and it's a town-owned property.
So why are these properties that we should be auctioning, and what's the cost of auctioning those properties?
We just see the RFs on all, the auctioneer. We're going to that road, and I'm gonna be presenting them again to you. Actually, it's 5 now that I just transfer one property that's in textile, was foreclosed way back. And we just transferred it to the foreclosure jail account. So yes, we're going to that road, and they present some paperwork for us, and we just have to look at through the presented RF and see who's the auctioneer that's gonna do for the town.
Okay.
But I haven't had the chance to really, I'm really busy. Tax time and everything. But I'm gonna fall to that auctions for those 4 or 5 properties that needs to be released.
So,
has to sell.
I'll let you do your slide, and then I'll ask the question.
You kind of got a step ahead, because this is the slide about foreclosures. So these are the 4 properties that the town.
Oh, okay.
4, and Mylene referenced additional 5th that's not on here, with the location, the taxes owing the period that they've owed taxes for, and the amount total. So the auction would recoup the value of all delinquent taxes and get these back on the tax rolls. And the auctioneer does not cost the town anything. They add on a percentage of the sale right onto at the public auction.
I think given those 2 options and given this list, I think I would recommend that we have a workshop on these and divide them up into 2, about which ones we think should go the foreclosure route and which one should go to the tax title route.
I would agree wholeheartedly with that.
Yep, I think, having said that, in my letter, because I want to do a letter first, at least put that either the town will do a tax sale or a foreclosure in my letter. And that's what I want to really hear from you guys before I send that letter. So that when that letter is sent, there might be few people that gonna be calling and everything, getting information. So at least I can put in my letter either tax selling or foreclose.
That's fine.
That'd be great.
That's fine.
At the town's
So, and
discretion.
then we will
Yes,
have.
at the town's discretion, I
Right.
would agree.
Right, we have 30 days, we will give them 30 days to comply with our letter, either tax agreement, abide with the tax agreement, and every fiscal year I'm gonna check them, and then I'm gonna put them back if I see them that they're not in compliance.
Absolutely.
Right.
So that they know the town is really looking into all these properties now, and they have to be current on their taxes.
And I would agree, and I would agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Alonso's suggestions on a workshop, because certainly some of these, I'm not opposed to selling the lien, but some of them, I think it's in the best interest of the town not to sell the lien.
And that's the reason why I'm here, because I just don't want to just do whatever I want to do. I want the board to really tell me what they want to do for all this list on the tax, and we go from there.
Sure.
And probably if whatever the outcome of my letter, maybe the board can decide if they want to raise my budget on the foreclosure part, so that instead of doing a 4 or 3 in 1 year, we can bump it up a little.
Right,
Because like my attorney, tax title attorney said, those tax title that's very old, it may take a while and may take a lot more money to foreclose our property.
Right.
But like you said, we don't do anything with those others, at least cut something, get something, and then take it from there.
I think we should just review a list at least annually, if not semi-annually, like, okay, this is the tax title list, this is the foreclosure list, and this is what we're not doing anything list, and just review where we are.
Three lists. And I want to ask the board too before, this, do you want me to start, because one of the question that was raised to me by my tax title attorney, he recommended to start the foreclosures on the New Year's, because they are more like cheaper and, can get out there, or start with the old years that it might take a while.
I think it depends on the property. It depends on the property. We have to look at the list. It depends on the property. I think that there are certain properties on the list that you've already provided that I think the town should act on.
And I just want to add to that more too. I have $22 pieces, new title that add into fiscal year 16. So every fiscal year, there's a lot more property.
So those 22 are not on this list you've given us?
Nope.
Can you send us that?
Oh,
list?
yes.
They are attached.
Hold on.
They're the second page.
Oh, they are, okay.
I'll get into that. Hold on.
Oh, no, we have them. Mylene, we have them.
Oh, okay, but...
This one?
No, those...
This one.
Now, this one, the white one?
Yeah.
This one.
It's the white
That's out of
one.
Munis, okay.
Oh, okay, okay. I think we have that too, don't we? No?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, you have the old one.
So did Maylene say that the longer they've been in trouble, the more expensive
More
it is?
money it's going to be to get them to foreclose.
All right. So you obviously need to consider that.
Before I start the foreclosure, I will start the letter, at least from my understanding, for that the board would like me to do, is to start the letter for 30 days. And from there, I'm going to wait for the board to tell me which one they see fit for me to start the foreclosure and tax selling.
Right, I think like Mr. Alonso just said, I think it's 3 lists. I think it's a no-action list, a lien sale list, and then a foreclosure list.
This is a question, are the letters sent certified? I mean,
No, it doesn't have to be certified.
so you aren't sure whether they actually get to the people or not?
There's a lot of options that I can do. Certified,
I mean, I don't know, I was just
Constable,
wondering if
but
people
it
just don't
doesn't
get them or
have
they
to be
throw them away.
You can do the certificate of mailing too, which is a lot cheaper than certified.
Yeah, certificate of mailing, yeah. Which is, we do that in the tax billing. I think I'm gonna do that, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we should schedule that workshop in the very near future, since this is...
One more question before I go. Am I gonna just wait via email, or do I have to go one of the town meetings still to just know what property, or should you wait for whatever outcome of my letter is?
She's talking about you splitting up the,
Yeah,
taking the list.
Right.
I would
Yeah.
recommend that we do the workshop on the May 9th meeting then, and we can, the other workshop that we were considering to hold, to do that in June.
That's fine. So the workshop will be May 9th.
All right. Do I have to be there?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think you've given us all the data that you need to.
Thank you so much.
I just want to
You don't sound like you want to be here.
Thank you.
No, I want to thank Mylene for all the work that she's put into this too, but she also did provide maps with a whole list of the properties and
I was waiting when I should ask what this map was for, so.
and there's a larger map over there as well.
Just, there's numbers on these properties. Which list do they correspond with? That's the only question.
There's a thick packet of
Okay,
properties.
the one with the thick packet. Okay, I got it.
Each one is numbered.
The one you just gave out, the one she...
No, the
No,
big
no.
thick packet. There's a big thick packet.
This one.
No, there's, this one?
This one.
There were only a couple.
I didn't have that, we don't have
I
that.
don't have that one.
There were only a couple.
We don't have that.
I mean, this they were supposed to be reviewed together.
Oh, okay.
I sent it to you via email.
Yeah, but
That's
I don't
fine.
want to print it.
You want this one?
Sure, sure. Thank you. Because you know I'm going to go
Just-
through every
yes,
single one.
email it to
so-
me. I don't mind looking at it on the screen.
Okay.
The numbers correspond, these two go together.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay, seeing that the town meeting is on Saturday, I think we ought to review the motions. Do we want to go through every single one, or are there a couple that you want to highlight?
No, I can highlight, and if, I put the motion in who's reading them according to, just as it reflected last year. It was the rotating order of the board.
Yep.
And so if there's any ones you saw that you would like someone else to speak with or speak on, let me know. But just some immediate changes. So Article 1, that article will be passed over because there's no reports to be heard for town meeting. So we can pass over that article. Article 5 is a majority vote, not a 4/5 vote.
No.
Which one?
Article 5.
All right, I get this from
What is
you
it?
there, right?
Majority.
I'm going to resend these, so
Okay. So
It's a majority.
it's a majority
for
vote.
prior year payment? I thought it was...
Yes,
one.
thought it'd be
because
two-thirds.
it's not actually a prior year payment, given the situation
Oh, okay, so
with,
it's something specific to this case?
Yes.
Right.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Other changes. The tentative amounts right now for Article 12 and 14, so Article 12, $3,496.90. And Article 14, $26,500.
And this will all be at the town meeting? so
Yes.
we don't. Okay. So I don't have to write anything down.
Yep. And the DPW director is going to read Article 18 for the cemetery. The bylaw review committee articles, Article 34 and 35, the chairman of the board will not be able to be present for the town meeting, so keep it
Who was that?
Rob Bowen.
Is there someone else from the bylaw review that can speak to it, or?
I can reach out to them to see if there can be. We're going to have the handout that references exactly what the bylaw review committee is recommending. And Article 37 and 39, there's a possibility that we're passing over those two articles just because there may not be any substantive changes to what we're putting the bylaws into the new code book. They're just typographical and renumbering.
On Article 26, you may want to put the Y back in Phyllis's name, too.
One thing that I would ask, I think most of them are self-explanatory. Actually, we may not even need it. I was going to say, at last year's town meeting, we had sort of a synopsis of why the article was presented, which I found really helpful. I think that was one of the first years we had that, and I thought it was really helpful when you were making the motion so that you could, especially if it was a quick,
Yeah, a little note.
just a little note about the general reasoning behind the article. I think
or
all
who
of.
was gonna speak to it
Right,
if
and I think,
someone
right,
was.
right, and I think all of them were just like one sentence. There was nothing that was.
I did do a PowerPoint for each of the articles when, so there'll be a slide. that will
When you read
give
it,
a
you know, the
short-
moderator says, "So tell us about it."
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just was helpful, it was just helpful to have that.
That's all, you just say
Yeah.
defer.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. All righty. Minutes, we have minutes for April 4th and April 11th.
They're attached to my.
Yeah, they're attached to the, yeah, they're all attached.
Well, that's because of the, she wanted you to see the review of the articles. That's why it's attached to the review
Oh.
sheet. It's not for the minutes.
Oh, gotcha.
It took me a while to figure that out, too.
Well, thank you.
No problem.
Warrants. I have a payroll deduction in the amount of $517,670.97. And accounts payable in the amount of $881,422.04. And a payroll for $690,111.68. Any action file issues?
I think we should
What do we have here?
just a letter that needs to be signed. The board.
Okay, there's a letter to be signed by the board to thank the members of the Architectural Preservation District Commission. Any committee reports, Ms. Luck?
The school committee met on April 26th. There was a transfer from the surplus in the electricity line of the school budget of $45,000. They moved it to the capital improvement line, and they're going to use it for the security cameras and equipment needed at the primary school. The school is in the process of adopting a school lunch insufficient funds policy and has already seen an increase in the payments against the student school lunch debts. It's kind of like the foreclosure letters, I guess. And they also accepted $1,600 in donations from Hannafords and professors at Fitchburg State University. Their next meeting is tomorrow, 5/3, here in Town Hall. I attended the Central Mass Regional Stormwater Steering Committee meeting on April 24th. The coalition is now at 33 communities, and Natick, Fitchburg, and Marlborough are joining. And it's good for us that Fitchburg's joining, because it's the only community that's next to us in the coalition. There was a discussion around Mass taking over the delegation of the MS4 permit, and the issue really is that the watershed coalitions don't want the state to take it over because they feel that the state is not going to be as stringent as the EPA. But under the new federal, the change in the administrations, they're rethinking that. So it's still very much up in the air. There was a discussion around the need for each community to have a flood plan survey and flood plan mitigation plan in place, and it needs to be updated every 5 years. Do you know where ours is?
I do not.
The next meeting of that committee is June 26th in Auburn. The Stormwater Task Force met April 27th. We needed to decide which activities of the MS4 permit would be assigned to our $25,000 for the Community Compact grant. And we settled on 4 different items. Adam's going to write that up, talk to Heather about it, and then we're going to vote on it at the next meeting. So they include the public education and outreach and public participation, carving out those items required in the first 2 years, if we can get money for that, establishment of critical outfalls, initial dry weather screening and sampling, because those things have to be outsourced, and if we can get money to do this, create a rain garden in a highly visible public location such as the library, so that helps us move the conversation along. So that's what we're hoping to do. And that's it.
The MPO met on Wednesday, April 19th, and it was probably one of the most interesting meetings I've ever attended. We're now putting forth the 2018-2022 TIP, and for the first time since I've been involved with the MPO, we do not have enough projects to meet the target funding available. So in 2018, in the scenario that's currently open for public comment, there's 1.3 million available. In 2019, there's 1.7 million available. In 2020, there's 507,000 available. And in 2021, there's 1 million available. In 2022, there's 2.5 million available. So in all of the years of programming, there is significant funds available for projects. We reviewed a number of scenarios, and the bottom line is that there just are not enough projects in the pipeline that are at the point that they are ready for construction. There are a number of projects that are not ready to move forward, or that have fallen off because they don't have the community support. So because we are we have so many target funds available, we are proposing a special meeting on Wednesday, May 10th at 6 p.m. for communities to come out, and we're requesting communities to bring projects to the meeting for potential inclusion for funding in some of the out years. And so given that we have a very strong pavement management plan, I would suggest that we have, I can't remember exactly, I think it might be 25 or 27 federal aid eligible roads. And, in order to be included in the appendix, the process would be that we would have to submit a project need form for a roadway to Mass DOT, and if in fact that project need form is approved, then it can then be included at least in the appendix part of the TIP. As you know, right now, we have Summer Street and Chase Road that are currently approved for funding this fiscal year. But there are significant funds available, and so the meeting is Wednesday, May 10th at 6 p.m., and it will be held in the administrative offices and storage facility at 840 North Main Street, which is across from the Mark Garage and Maintenance Facility, and they are really hoping that communities will come and bring project ideas and potential projects for inclusion in the TIP, because as I said, this is the first year that we have not programmed all of the target funds, and in fact, we haven't programmed all of the target funds for any of the years. So,
Assuming the DPW director is aware of that?
He is not, as because of my situation last week, I did not get this information out, and so you did receive a copy from Brad Harris relative to the meeting, and the notice includes the funding, and I can send it to you again, and I can send it to Jack, but I would strongly urge that we look at what projects we could potentially have funded through the TIP. The other news at the meeting, there is currently there is a draft TIP out right now for public comment. And the public comment period for that will run from April 21st to Thursday, May 11th. We're just looking for comments on the existing document. The projects in Lunenburg have not changed. They are still programmed for 2017 and 2018. One question that did come up is where we are with Chase Road, so if we could perhaps check on that, when a potential advertising date on that is. Right now, the Arthur Frost from MassDOT did have an update on the Summer Street project, and right now the target advertisement date for the Summer Street project is August. The fiscal year for MPOs runs from October 1st to September 30th. So as long as the project is advertised prior to the start of the fiscal year, then that funding is locked in. So we need to make sure that we don't miss that deadline for the Summer Street advertisement. But right now, my understanding, based on the information I've received from Jack Rodequins and Trish Domigan, the engineer, we are on target for that. The target was August, but it may in fact be able to be moved up, according to Arthur Frost. But I don't have any information on where we are with Chase Road. So it's going to be important that we at least get that advertised prior to the October 1st deadline. There is currently a draft critical urban freight corridors document out for public comment, and this is a requirement from the federal level that we have an update on the urban freight corridors, and that information is available through the MART website. And there's currently a draft transit element amendment to our existing tip for some realignment of projects for MART, that either things were funded other ways or needs changed and priorities changed. So that is available through the MART website. So that's...
Cable Advisory doesn't meet until Monday, May 15th. That is 3 days before we have our public hearing here that I talked about, that we are looking for a big attendance for cable subscribers and town representatives and town department representatives to talk about. The school building committee they canceled their meeting that was supposed to be tomorrow, and I think they're scheduled to have it next Wednesday, which is a day I cannot attend. It may get pushed out again. I don't know if they have a quorum yet. And the finance committee met last Thursday, but I was not able to attend.
And I have no reports. Town manager report?
So for tonight's report, I should add a little levity. I put in what has been accomplished in the first 100 days as town manager. So just some highlights from what's been accomplished or has been set in motion since I began on January 17th. The fiscal 2018 budget, so my first 30 days was primarily dedicated to assembling the budget, meeting with all the department heads, immersing myself in the budget documents to learn the current needs of the town, meeting with the capital planning committee to learn the capital items that were being requested. I believe we have a well thought out budget that is fiscally responsible, and it exceeds our financial policies in that we have a creation of a special purpose stabilization fund that we're adding beyond the 5% of the operating budget to prepare for future capital needs, as well as putting money into the OPEB trust fund, and that for the first time since creation in 2010. The Community Compact, in February, the board endorsed entering into the Community Compact program for the 3 best practices chosen, and we received notification that we'll receive up to $45,000 in grant funds for those implementation of those 3 best practices. We will have 2 years to implement these practices, but I believe we can have them accomplished, I hope, in 1 year. Complete Streets, we began the discussion of entering the Complete Streets program in February. I worked with the chairman of the board, the DPW director, and the land use director to present a draft policy on April 11th that was formally adopted by the board on April 18th. The policy has been uploaded through the Mass DOT portal, so we're waiting notification on our score that we should receive any day now, and will make us eligible for up to $50,000 in technical assistance. Town Council RFP process. The requests for proposals were sent out, and 9 responses were received prior to my coming to Lunenburg. But we began a comprehensive process of interviews that included evaluation criteria, reference checks, second interview with the 4 finalists to select new town council. I was impressed by the board's intent to be objective in the process and how each member provided valuable input in the process. The sale of town building RFP, Beginning in January, I attended the Building Reuse Committee meetings and worked with the chairman of the board and the land use director to develop the RFP that was approved both by the Building Reuse Committee and the Board of Selectmen, and was issued in February and had a return date of March 24th. In order to meet a timeframe that would present options to voters at the upcoming town meeting on May 6th, we had an aggressive timeline to put out this RFP, set up a site visit for prospective bidders, and receive potential bids to evaluate. Unfortunately, the town did not receive any bids on March 24th, but substantial work has been accomplished by both the Building Reuse Committee, the Land Use Director, and I on this project, and I look forward to the next steps in this process, whatever they may be. An update on, and just to add on to those first 100 days, I also did this knowing that we will be reviewing goals of the board, and also I'd like to discuss some certain goals I have and align them with the board's goals. So I look forward to making progress on different areas in town. Update on the town hall. The DPW director coordinated the commercial cleaning company to clean the bird waste from the attic. That has been achieved. That occurred about 2 weeks ago. Our office contacted the Secretary of State's office to inquire about what our options are about records in the basement that are beyond repair. And we were informed that as long as we keep a log of all the records to be destroyed, even if they're considered permanent records, we can destroy them. So what the DPW director has recommended, and I agree with, is we would coordinate a date to set up an area in the parking lot where these records will be brought out into the parking lot. The appropriate department heads will review the documents to see if they should be destroyed or not. If they're beyond repair, we would put them aside to be destroyed, and the records to be retained, we would put into some sort of container, such as a pod, to hold on to for a company to come in to clean those documents, to do the mold remediation, because we can't put those in an area where it would contaminate with mold in a separate area if we had somewhere to put them. The next step would be to do that and then obtain quotes to do the work necessary to make the basement weather tight. And right at this point tonight, I have no further information on cost to perform that work.
Did the bird waste cleaning come out about what you was quoted?
Yes, it is $7,400.
Right. Okay.
I received notification from the Lieutenant Governor's office that the community compact signing will be this Thursday, May 4th at 2 p.m. The event will be held at the library community room and will be open to the public. So I invite everyone to attend that signing. It will be a very positive event.
Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend. That's the day of my dad's funeral, so I will not be there.
Can you please send an email? So just send an email as a reminder.
Certainly.
2 p.m., okay.
And an announcement, the DPW director let me know that National Grid, beginning this week, is doing the installation of a gas pipeline from the Rotary and Whalum to Electric Ave intersection and turning north on Electric Ave to the new Unitil building to provide natural gas to the site. National Grid is...
That's a little ironic, isn't it?
It's hysterical.
For the rest of
That
everyone.
Unitil put their building
Yes.
outside of Unitil's own service area.
Mhm.
Maybe they're onto something
Yeah,
there.
maybe that was intentional.
So, National Grid supplying the natural gas to the site because the site is out of Unitil's service area, and they're unsure at this time whether gas service will be available to residents along the new pipeline.
Oh, that's too bad.
What's that?
All set.
We're going to defer the executive session that was on the agenda to a future date. I just want to mention our upcoming schedule. Our next meeting, next Tuesday, is a workshop meeting, so while it's open to the public, it will not be televised. And we had several items for workshop, and I think we made some adjustments tonight as well. So we'll get that out as soon as possible so that we can do whatever pre-work is required. I think that's it on tonight's agenda. Is there any public comment from the public? Any public comment from the board?
I want to commend somebody for making it through the entire, somebody from the public who's not doing a newspaper story. It sends me back to my 2 years where I sat in this audience before joining the board, so hopefully that's on your mind and that's what you're thinking. Good.
Just
Thank
one
you.
question. Does the board want to hold a meeting prior to the town meeting for any last-minute business? Do we need to book a room?
Is there a need, or?
Doesn't matter to
If
me.
you're going
You
to
tell me.
make a recommendation on the articles that you haven't, you're going to do them on town floor?
I think all of
That
them,
as we hear
I
the
think all of them, we
presentation.
decided, the ones we didn't, I think we said we were going to do on town meeting floor, right?
Just historically, we usually do one, even if we don't need one, at least 15 to 20 minutes before, just in case anything
Just in
happens
case,
between now and
just in
then that we
case.
need to
Yeah,
address.
we might as well post one
Okay.
for 15 minutes prior to the meeting, right?
Yeah, that's what I would do.
If we don't need to do it,
Then
we don't.
Yep.
Then we just meet 15 minutes earlier and talk.
I would accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.